Greetings, fellow fans. You're tuned into Gringotts Hub, presenting to you today, what if the Goblins found Dumbledore's tracking charms on the Lord Potter-Black-Peverell at age 7? Show some love by liking and subscribing. Enjoy the story ahead. Chapter 1, The Weight of Gold and Blood. The boy had learned 3 things by the age of 7. Don't ask questions. Don't make noise. Don't exist any louder than absolutely necessary. So when Aunt Petunia seized his wrist in the kitchen that gray Tuesday morning and said, "You're coming with me, and if you embarrass me, you won't eat for a week," Harry simply nodded. He didn't ask where. He didn't ask why. He pulled on Dudley's old trainers, 3 sizes too large, stuffed with newspaper at the toes, and followed her out to the car. Petunia's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Harry noticed because he noticed everything about the Dursleys. Noticing was how you survived. Shaking hands meant she was scared, and scared Petunia was more dangerous than angry Petunia, because scared Petunia needed someone to blame, and Harry was always available for that. They drove into London. Harry pressed his forehead to the window and watched the city scroll past, careful to keep his breath shallow so he wouldn't fog the glass. Aunt Petunia had hit him for fogging the glass once. Or maybe it was twice. The days blurred together when you were hungry enough. She parked in a garage near Charing Cross Road and dragged him down the pavement, her fingers digging into his shoulder hard enough to bruise. Harry kept pace. He was good at keeping pace. Then she stopped in front of a pub that Harry could see, but the people streaming around them apparently couldn't. A dingy, dark-fronted place wedged between a bookshop and a record store. The sign read "The Leaky Cauldron" in paint so faded it was nearly gone. "Don't touch anything," Petunia hissed. "Don't speak to anyone. Just don't be you." Harry nodded. She pulled him inside and the smell hit him first, pipe smoke and butterbeer and something earthy underneath, like old stone after rain. The pub was dim and scattered with people in strange clothes, robes and pointed hats, and one old woman who appeared to be smoking a pipe that exhaled small blue butterflies. Harry stared. He couldn't help it. "Stop gawking," Petunia snapped, but her voice had gone thin and reedy. She was looking around the pub like she expected something to leap out at her. "Through the back. Your mother's letter said through the back." They went through the back, into a small courtyard with a brick wall. Petunia pulled a crumpled, much-folded letter from her purse and squinted at it. 3 up, 2 across, she muttered, and jabbed her finger at a brick. Nothing happened. She jabbed it again. Then she slapped the wall with her open palm, and Harry saw her eyes go bright and wet. "Damn you, Lily," she whispered. "Damn you for making me do this." "Ma'am." A stooped old wizard had followed them out, his smile gap-toothed and kind. "Need a hand with the entrance?" "Happens to Muggleborn sometimes, no shame, I am not just open the wall. Please." The old wizard tapped the bricks with his wand in a pattern, and the wall rearranged itself into an archway, and Harry forgot how to breathe. Diagon alleys stretched before him, narrow and cobblestoned and alive. Shops with windows full of impossible things, cauldrons that stirred themselves, books whose covers moved, broomsticks that hovered in their displays. Owls on perches outside a shadowy emporium. A cart selling roasted chestnuts that popped in small firework bursts of color. Witches and wizards everywhere, robes billowing, wands tucked behind ears or gesturing lazily at floating packages. Harry felt something inside his chest crack open. Not painfully. Like a window. "This is real. This is where I come from." "Move," Petunia said, and yanked him forward. They walked down the alley and every step felt like walking into a dream. Harry wanted to stop at every window, every shop front, every impossible detail. But Petunia's grip was iron and her pace was punishing, and at the end of the alley, towering over everything else, stood a building of white marble that seemed to lean forward like a crooked, knowing giant. Gringotts Wizarding Bank. The words were carved into the stone above bronze doors, and standing beside those doors were 2 creatures Harry had never seen before. Short, dark-eyed, sharp-featured, dressed in scarlet and gold uniforms. They watched Petunia and Harry approach with expressions of absolute, practiced indifference. Goblins, Harry thought, and the word surfaced from somewhere deep, a fairy tale, maybe, or something older. Something that felt like memory but couldn't be. Petunia's hand tightened on his shoulder until her nails bit skin. They walked through the bronze doors, through a second set of silver doors engraved with a warning. Harry read quickly, "Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed," and into a vast marble hall filled with goblins behind high counters, scratching in ledgers, weighing gemstones, examining things through jewelers' loupes with their dark, clever eyes. Petunia marched up to the nearest available counter, pulling Harry with her. The goblin behind it didn't look up from his ledger. "I need to access a trust," Petunia said. Her voice had gone high and brittle. "My sister, Lily Evans, Lily Potter, she left a letter saying there were funds. Muggle currency. For the boy's care." The goblin still didn't look up. "Name of account holder. Harry Potter." The quill stopped moving. The goblin looked up. His eyes went to Petunia first, dismissed her in half a second, and then dropped to Harry. Harry looked back. He was used to being stared at. He was not used to the expression that crossed this goblin's face, something fast and complicated that flickered through surprise, calculation, and settled on a careful blankness. "Harry Potter," the goblin repeated. "Yes," Petunia said impatiently. "Can we just, one moment, madam?" The goblin reached beneath his counter. Harry heard a sound like a bell, but deeper, more like a gong struck underwater. Two other goblins materialized from somewhere, flanking their counter, and one of them bent to murmur something in a language Harry didn't recognize. Harsh consonants, rolling gutturals. The first goblin's eyes widened fractionally. "If you'll follow me," the goblin said, stepping down from his high stool. "Both of you." "I just need to make a withdrawal," Petunia said. "I don't need to follow anyone anywhere, madam." The goblin's voice could have cut glass. "You have brought the heir of the ancient and most noble house of Potter into this bank for the first time. There are protocols. You will follow me, or you will leave." Petunia went white. Then she nodded once, jerkily, and they followed. Through the marble hall, past counters and queues and a wizard arguing loudly about exchange rates. Through a door that Harry would have sworn wasn't there a moment ago. Down a corridor of polished dark stone, lit by torches that burned without flickering. The air changed, it got colder, denser, and Harry felt something press against his skin. Not physically. More like the air itself was looking at him. They passed through an archway carved with runes and Harry felt it. A pulse. A vibration that started at the crown of his head and rolled down through his body like a wave, and suddenly every goblin in the corridor stopped moving. The one leading them spun around. His eyes were wide, actually wide, the careful blankness gone entirely. "Grip hook," he said sharply to one of the escort goblins. "Get Director Ragnarok. Now." The young goblin, Grip hook, stared at Harry for one frozen second, then turned and ran. "What's happening?" Petunia's voice had climbed an octave. "What did the boy do?" "What, the boy did nothing, madam." The lead goblin's voice had changed. Something almost like reverence had crept into it, warring with fury. "But someone has done a great deal to the boy. Our security wards have detected, Blackthorn, what's the count?" Another goblin was running some kind of instrument over Harry, a crystal on a chain that pulsed different colors as it moved. Harry stood very still. He was good at standing still. 17 tracking charms, layered and self-renewing, the goblin called Blackthorn said, and his voice was tight with something Harry recognized as anger. "A magical core suppression bind, class 4, at minimum. Mail redirection ward keyed to. I'll need to trace the anchor point, but the signature is," he stopped. Looked at the lead goblin. "Bog Rod. The signature on these castings. It's Dumbledore. Silence. The kind that has weight. All of them? Bogrod asked. Every single one. Harry didn't know what any of this meant. He knew the name Dumbledore, he'd heard it once, maybe, in a half-remembered whisper, or maybe in a dream. But the goblins' faces told him everything he needed to understand. Someone had done something to him. Something bad. Something these creatures, with their sharp teeth and sharper eyes, considered an outrage. There's more. Blackthorn's crystal had stopped over Harry's forehead, over the scar that Harry hated, the lightning bolt that throbbed sometimes in the night. The crystal was pulsing black. Bogrod, there's a soul fragment. Anchored to the scar tissue. Parasitic. It's, gods of the deep, it's feeding on his core. Petunia made a small, choked sound. Bogrod stared at the crystal. Then at Harry. Then he did something Harry didn't expect, he knelt, bringing himself to Harry's eye level, which given goblin height wasn't far to go. Mr. Potter, Bogrod said, and his voice was careful now, almost gentle in a way that seemed to cost him effort. I need you to understand that you are safe in this bank. No one will harm you here. What we have found on your person it is a violation of the highest order. We are going to help you. Do you understand? Harry looked at him. Green eyes, too large in a too thin face, behind crooked glasses held together with tape. Will it hurt? Harry asked. Because that was the practical question. That was the survival question. Not what is it or who did it or why me. Just, will it hurt? Because he could handle pain. He'd had plenty of practice. Something shifted in Bogrod's expression. Something old and fierce. Some of it will, the goblin said honestly. But we will be with you throughout. And when it is done, you will feel things you have never felt before. You will feel yourself. Harry considered this for a moment that felt much longer than it was. Okay, he said. Director Ragnarok was not what Harry expected. Then again, Harry hadn't known what to expect, so that was a meaningless statement. But if he'd been asked to imagine the leader of the Goblin Bank, he might have pictured someone ancient, wizened, dripping with gold. Ragnarok was none of those things. He was broad-shouldered for a goblin, with iron-gray hair pulled back from a face that looked like it had been carved from granite by someone who didn't believe in soft edges. His eyes were black and bright and missed absolutely nothing. He'd arrived in the underground chamber where the goblins had brought Harry within minutes of being summoned, flanked by 4 goblin warriors in full battle armor and a female goblin in healer's robes who immediately began circling Harry with instruments and muttered incantations. Report, Ragnarok said. One word. No greeting, no preamble. Bogrod reported. The tracking charms. The suppression bind. The mail ward. The soul fragment. Dumbledore's signature on all of it, except the soul fragment, which carried a different magical signature entirely, one the goblins hadn't yet identified. Ragnarok listened without expression. When Bogrod finished, the director stood motionless for a long moment. Then he looked at Harry. You are Harry James Potter, he said. Not a question. Yes, sir. Son of James Charles Potter and Lily Potter née Evans. Yes, sir. Harry hesitated. I think so. My aunt doesn't talk about them much. Your aunt. Ragnarok's gaze shifted to Petunia, who was standing against the far wall looking like she wanted the stone to swallow her. Mrs. Dursley. You are the boy's current guardian. Yes. Dumbledore left him on our doorstep. We didn't ask I did not ask how you acquired him. I asked if you are his guardian. Ragnarok's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The answer appears to be yes, though the manner of your guardianship is a subject we will address. For now. He turned back to Harry. Mr. Potter, the things attached to you are dangerous. The tracking charms are an invasion of your privacy and a violation of Goblin-Wizard treaty law, as they were placed without the consent of your magical guardian, and we have no record of a magical guardian being legally appointed. The suppression bind on your magical core is criminal. It is strangling your magic. The soul fragment, he paused. The first crack in his composure. The soul fragment is an abomination. It must be removed immediately. Then remove it, Harry said. Ragnock studied him. You are not frightened. Harry shrugged. The motion made his oversized shirt slip off one shoulder, exposing a collarbone that stood out too sharply. I've had worse done to me than things that hurt, sir. At least you're telling me about it first. The chamber went very quiet. Ragnock's eyes dropped to Harry's exposed collarbone, traveled to the faded bruise on his neck that his shirt collar usually covered, to his too thin wrists, to the way he stood, weighed on the balls of his feet, ready to move, ready to dodge. The stance of a child who expected to be hit. Ragnock turned to Petunia Dursley, and the temperature in the room dropped. Healer Sylvanthorn, he said, not looking away from Petunia. Full diagnostic on the boy. Everything. Physical and magical. I want records. Director, Petunia started. You will be silent, Mrs. Dursley, or you will be silenced. Those are your options. Petunia closed her mouth. The healer, Sylvanthorn, approached Harry with what looked like a flat silver disc. Hold still, child. This won't hurt. She pressed the disc to his chest and murmured words in the goblin language. The disc glowed, pulsed, and produced a long scroll of parchment that unspooled into Sylvanthorn's waiting hand. She read as it wrote itself, and Harry watched her face change. He watched the professional detachment crack. He watched a goblin healer, a creature of a species known for their stoicism, press her lips together so hard they went white. She handed the scroll to Ragnock without a word. Ragnock read it. His jaw tightened. A muscle in his temple jumped. Healer, he said, please take Mr. Potter to the ritual chamber and begin preparations for a full cleansing and unbinding. Use the old protocols. The old ones. Director, the old protocols haven't been used in, I am aware. Use them. Sylvanthorn nodded and held out her hand to Harry. Come with me, Mr. Potter. Harry looked at her hand. He wasn't used to people offering him their hand. After a moment, he took it. Her fingers were cool and dry and her grip was firm without being painful. That was new too. As they walked toward the door, Harry heard Ragnock's voice behind him, speaking to Petunia. Mrs. Dursley. You will now explain to me, in precise detail, the living conditions of the heir of House Potter in your home. You will not omit details. You will not soften the truth. If you attempt to lie to me in the heart of my bank, I will know, and the consequences will be severe. Begin with the cupboard. Petunia made a sound like a bird caught in a wire. Harry didn't look back. The ritual chamber was deep beneath Gringotts, carved into the living rock, and it thrummed with a power that made Harry's skin prickle. Runes covered every surface, floor, walls, ceiling, cut deep into the stone and filled with something that glowed faintly silver. In the center of the room sat a stone basin large enough for Harry to lie in, and around it, 7 goblin cursebreakers were arranging themselves in a precise formation. Remove your shirt, please, Sylvanthorn said. Harry pulled off Dudley's old shirt. He heard one of the cursebreakers draw a sharp breath. He knew what they were seeing. He'd seen it himself in the bathroom mirror, the topography of a childhood spent as a punching bag. Faded bruises in various stages of yellowing. A thin scar on his left shoulder blade where Vernon's belt buckle had caught him wrong. Ribs he could count. He climbed into the basin when Sylvanthorn directed him. The stone was warm, not cold as he'd expected, and it seemed to hum against his back. Griphook appeared at the edge of his vision. The young goblin had shed his formal coat and was standing among the cursebreakers, looking at Harry with an expression that mixed professional focus with something raw. Mr. Potter, Griphook said. "I've been assigned as the primary account manager for the Potter estates. I'll be present throughout this process. The ritual will remove the foreign magic from your body in stages. The tracking charms first, those are simplest. Then the male ward. Then the suppression bind. The soul fragment." He glanced at the lead cursebreaker, who nodded grimly. "The soul fragment will be last, and it will be the most painful. We will not lie to you about that." "I'm ready," Harry said. Griphook looked at him, this 7-year-old boy lying in a stone ritual basin in the bowels of a goblin bank, beaten and starved and wrapped in 17 layers of someone else's magic, saying "I'm ready" with the calm of a soldier. "Yes," Griphook said quietly. "I believe you are." The cursebreakers began to chant. The tracking charms came off like layers of old paint, peeling and flaking away in wisps of blue-white light that dissolved in the air. Harry felt each one go, a slight tugging sensation, an easing of pressure he hadn't known was there. 1, 2, 5, 10, 17. 17 points of invisible surveillance, removed, catalogued, and preserved in crystal vials as evidence. 17. On a child. The male ward was next, and this one Harry felt more acutely, a twisting, wrenching sensation centered behind his sternum, like something hooked was being pulled free. He gritted his teeth. Sylvanthorn pressed a cool cloth to his forehead. The ward came loose with a sound like tearing fabric and materialized above him as a web of golden threads that the cursebreakers quickly contained. It had been redirecting every piece of magical mail addressed to Harry Potter to a location in Scotland. Hogwarts. Dumbledore's office. Years of mail, Griphook muttered, making notes on a long scroll. Birthday cards, inheritance notifications, Wisengamot correspondence, investment reports, all redirected. The financial implications alone, focus, Griphook, the lead cursebreaker said. The suppression bind was different. Harry felt at the moment they started working on it, not a tugging or peeling but a cracking, like ice breaking up on a frozen river. Deep in his chest, something vast and bright and wild surged against its constraints, and the cursebreakers chanting intensified, their voices rising in harmony and counter-harmony, weaving structures of sound and magic around the thing that was trying to break free. "Easy," Sylvanthorn said, her hand on Harry's shoulder. "Let it come slowly. Your magic has been bound since, Griphook, what's the dating on this bind?" Griphook consulted his instruments. His face went blank. November 1st, 1981. The night after his parents died. Someone had suppressed his magical core the night after his parents died. He'd been 15 months old. The bind cracked. Splintered. Shattered. And Harry's magic roared. It came out of him like a wave, like a dam bursting, and the ritual chamber shook. The runes on the walls blazed white. The cursebreakers staggered but held their positions, their chanting shifting to contain and channel the raw power flooding the room. Harry's back arched off the stone, his eyes flew open, and the world was different. He could feel the stone beneath him, the magic in it, the wards layered through the bank like a living nervous system, the heartbeats of every goblin in the room, the ancient sleeping power deep in the earth below. He could feel everything. "Merlin's blood," one of the cursebreakers whispered. "His core, that's not," the suppression bind was containing all of that. "Quiet," the lead cursebreaker snapped. Containment pattern 7. Now. They worked for several minutes to stabilize Harry's magic, to give it structure so it wouldn't tear him apart from the inside. Harry lay in the basin and felt tears running down his temples into his hair, not from pain but from the sheer overwhelming presence of something that had always been his and had been stolen from him before he could walk. This was his magic. This bright, fierce, endless thing. It had been caged for 6 years and it sang inside him now like a living creature finally set free, and Harry laughed. He couldn't help it. He laughed, and the torches in the chamber flared, and Griphook's scroll ripped itself from his hands and fluttered around the room like a bird, and Sylvanthorn actually smiled. "One more," she said, and her smile faded. The last one. The soul fragment. Harry stopped laughing. He could feel it now, with his magic fully unbound, he could feel the thing in his scar. A cold, dark knot of something wrong, something that whispered at the edges of his consciousness in a voice that wasn't his. It was hooked into his magical core like a tick, feeding, growing, and now that his magic was awake and aware, it recoiled from the parasite with visceral disgust. "It's going to fight," the lead cursebreaker said. "Soul fragments are self-preserving. When we begin extraction, it will try to anchor deeper. Mr. Potter, you will need to push it out from your side while we pull from ours. Can you do that?" "Tell me what to do," Harry said. "Feel the cold spot. The wrong thing. And reject it. Push it out like pushing a splinter out of your skin. Your magic will know what to do. Trust it." Harry closed his eyes. Found the cold knot. Wrapped his newly freed magic around it the way you'd wrap your fingers around a piece of broken glass lodged in your palm. "Now," the lead cursebreaker said, and the chanting changed, deeper, harsher, a sound like grinding stone and ringing iron, and Harry pushed. The thing in his scar screamed. Not out loud, inside him, inside his mind, a shriek of fury and terror and hunger that clawed at the walls of his consciousness, and for one horrible instant, Harry saw through eyes that weren't his, a dark room, a high cold voice, a green flash of light and his mother falling, and then his magic surged, golden and fierce and utterly, savagely his, and it ripped the fragment free like pulling a rotten tooth. Harry screamed. He couldn't help that either. The pain was blinding, absolute, a white-hot poker driven through his forehead and out the back of his skull. Blood ran from his scar, real blood, bright red, flooding his face, and above him, a wisp of black smoke writhed and twisted and shrieked in a voice that didn't belong to any living thing. The cursebreaker's chanting peaked. A goblin-forged silver bowl was thrust into the air above Harry and the black smoke was drawn into it, compacted, contained, sealed with runes that blazed and locked. The screaming stopped. The chamber went silent. Harry lay in the basin, breathing hard, blood cooling on his face. His scar throbbed, but differently now. Cleaner. Like a wound that could actually heal. Sylvanthorn wiped the blood away with gentle hands. "It's done," she said. "It's all done." Harry opened his eyes. The world was sharper than it had been before. Clearer. The colors were more vivid, the edges more defined. He looked at his hands and felt, his magic moving beneath his skin, golden threads of light pulsing with his heartbeat. "How do you feel?" Griphook asked. He'd retrieved his scroll and was clutching it to his chest. Harry sat up slowly. His whole body ached, but underneath the ache was something new, a warmth, a fullness, a sense of presence that he'd never known was missing until it was returned. "I feel like me," Harry said. "I think this is the first time I've ever felt like me." Griphook stared at him. Then he turned away sharply and said something in gobbledygook that made two of the cursebreakers snort. "What did you say?" Harry asked. "I said that Albus Dumbledore is going to regret the day he touched what belongs to the Goblin Nation's clients." Harry frowned. "I don't belong to anyone." Griphook looked back at him. And then, surprisingly, he grinned. It was a sharp thing, all teeth, but it reached his eyes. "No," he agreed. "You don't. And that, Mr. Potter, is precisely the point." They gave him food. That alone was nearly enough to make Harry cry again, and he was furious with himself for it. It was just food. Bread and soup and some kind of roasted meat and a goblet of something sweet that fizzed on his tongue. But they gave it to him. Without him asking, without him earning it, without conditions or contingencies. Sylvanthorn sat across from him in the small chamber adjoining the ritual room and watched him eat with clinical attention, adjusting the portions, making notes on his nutritional state. "The healing will take time," she told him. "Your body has been systematically malnourished. We can accelerate bone density recovery and correct the worst of the damage, but you'll need proper meals, real meals, 3 times a day minimum for the next several months. Harry nodded, mouth full of the best bread he'd ever tasted. And your magical core, now that it's unbound, will be volatile for a time. You may experience accidental magic, more intense than what's typical for a child your age, given the size of your core. Things may break. Catch fire. Levitate. Don't be alarmed. Is my core big? Harry asked. Sylvanthorn exchanged a look with Griphook, who had settled himself at the table with his own smaller plate and a truly enormous stack of documents. Mr. Potter, Griphook said carefully, your magical core, with the suppression bind removed, measures at a level we have not seen in a living wizard in some time. How much time? Our records go back quite far. Griphook. The young goblin set down his quill. The last wizard we have on record with a core measurement comparable to yours was Merlin himself. And even that comparison may not be entirely apt, as our instruments had difficulty providing a precise reading. The needle went past the end of the scale. Harry put down his bread. Is that bad? It is the opposite of bad. It is, however, going to make a great many powerful people very nervous, and personally, I find that delightful. Griphook picked his quill back up. Now. We need to discuss your inheritance. He spread a large piece of parchment across the table, thick, cream-colored, covered in writing that seemed to glow faintly. This is your bloodline and inheritance assessment, produced by the ritual basin using 7 drops of your blood. Standard procedure for any heir visiting Gringotts for the first time. The results are comprehensive. Harry scooted his chair closer. The parchment read, Inheritance Test, Harry James Potter born, July 31, 1980 father, James Charles Potter, deceased, mother, Lily Potter née Evans, deceased, lordships by blood, the ancient and most noble house of Potter, paternal, direct line, the ancient and most noble house of Black, godfather's will, Sirius Orain Black, designated heir, the most ancient and noble house of Peverell, paternal, direct descent, dormant line reactivated, vault holdings, Potter family vault, estimated. Liquid assets, 47 million galleons Potter Trust Vault, 500,000 galleons, restricted until age 11, currently subject to unauthorized withdrawals, Black family vault, estimated liquid assets, 112 million galleons, access pending will execution, Peverell family vault, contents unknown, sealed since 1291, blood key required, properties, Potter Manor, Yorkshire, under Fidelius, secret keeper, unknown, Potter Cottage, Godric's Hollow, destroyed, land rights intact, 12, Grimald Place, London. Black Estate, access pending will execution, Peverell Keep, Dartmoor, unplotted, blood key required, additional, 7 rental properties, 2 commercial buildings, Diagon Alley Wisingamot seats, 3, Potter, Black, Peverell, all currently inactive, irregularities noted, no legal magical guardian on record, Potter Trust Vault access 27 times since November 1981 by A. PWB Dumbledore, no authorization on file, Potter Family Vault Management Proxy claimed by APWB Dumbledore, no authorization on file, annual withdrawal of 50,000 galleons from Potter Family Vault to Hogwarts Special Fund since 1981, no authorization on file, will of James and Lily Potter, sealed by order of APWB Dumbledore, Chief Warlock Authority, November 3, 1981, will of Sirius Orain Black, sealed by order of APWB Dumbledore, Chief Warlock Authority, November 5, 1981, Harry. Read it twice. He was 7, and some of the words were unfamiliar, but he was a bright child, brighter than anyone at the Dursleys had ever bothered to notice, and the shape of it was clear enough. He stole from me, Harry said. Griphook's quill stopped moving. He sealed my parents' will. He took money from my vault. He put tracking charms on me and bound my magic and sent me to people who, Harry's voice cracked. He breathed through it. He sent me to people who keep me in a cupboard under the stairs and don't feed me and hit me when I ask questions. And he stole from me. Yes, Griphook said. No softening. No equivocation. Just the truth, plain and sharp. He did all of those things. Why? That is a question we intend to answer. But first, Mr. Potter, there is the matter of your lordships. You are the last of 3 ancient and noble lines. By goblin law and wizarding law both, you have the right to claim those lordships regardless of your age. Typically, an heir claims at 17, but in cases of extraordinary circumstances, emergency claiming is permitted. And I would characterize your circumstances as extraordinary. What happens when I claim them? You become, legally, Lord Potter-Black-Peverell. You gain control of your vaults, your properties, your Wisengamot seats. You gain the legal standing to challenge every action Dumbledore has taken in your name. You become, in the eyes of the law, an emancipated minor with full rights and protections. And no one can send me back to the Dursleys. No one would dare. Harry looked at the parchment. At the numbers, the properties, the seats of power. He was 7 years old. He weighed perhaps 3 stone. His glasses were held together with tape and his clothes were rags, and an hour ago he'd been a boy in a cupboard. How do I claim them? He asked. Griphook reached into his coat and produced 3 small boxes. He opened them one by one, revealing 3 rings, 1 gold with a ruby, 1 silver with an onyx, 1 dark iron with a stone that seemed to contain swirling mist. By blood and by will, Griphook said. Place each ring on your finger and speak the words, I, Harry James Potter, claim the lordship of house, name, by blood and magic, so mote it be. If the magic accepts you, and it will, the rings will bond to you. Harry reached for the Potter ring first. It was warm, almost hot, and it hummed against his fingertips. I, Harry James Potter, claim the lordship of House Potter by blood and magic, so mote it be. The ring slid onto his finger and blazed. Golden light erupted from it, racing up his arm, wrapping around him in threads of warmth. Harry gasped, not from pain but from the sensation of something recognizing him, welcoming him, a magic far older than Dumbledore or Hogwarts or the Ministry, reaching across centuries to embrace its heir. The black ring next. Silver light, colder but no less fierce, and with it a rush of something, memories, impressions, the weight of a house that had lost its way and was desperate for someone to bring it home. And then the Peverell ring. The moment Harry's fingers touched the dark iron band, every light in the chamber went out. The darkness lasted only a second. When the lights returned, the ring was on Harry's finger and the mist inside its stone was moving, swirling, forming shapes that almost resolved into faces before dissolving again. Harry felt the Peverell magic settle into him like a foundation stone being laid, deep, ancient, immovable. This was the oldest magic he'd touched yet, and it didn't welcome him so much as acknowledge him, the way a mountain acknowledges the sky. It had been waiting. It was patient. It had all the time in the world. The 3 rings glowed on Harry's right hand for a long moment, then merged, flowing together into a single band of braided gold, silver, and iron, set with a stone that shifted between ruby, onyx, and mist depending on the angle. Harry looked at his hand. Looked at Griphook. Lord Potter-Black-Peverell, Griphook said, and there was something in his voice, respect, genuine respect, not the performed deference of a banker to a client but something earned. Welcome back. Ragnarok was waiting for them in a chamber that Harry suspected was the goblin equivalent of a war room. Maps on the walls, a massive stone table, and around that table, a dozen goblins in various states of furious productivity. Petunia was not there. Your aunt has been escorted from the bank, Ragnarok said, reading the question on Harry's face. She has been given a choice. She may sign a magically binding document acknowledging her mistreatment of you and waiving any claim to guardianship or compensation, in exchange for which Gringotts will not pursue criminal charges against her under either goblin or wizarding law. Or she may refuse, in which case our legal department will destroy her. Those were the exact words you used. I may have been less diplomatic. Harry almost smiled. Almost. She signed. Before I finished the sentence. She also provided, under mild compulsion, I will admit, a full account of your living conditions at number 4, Privet Drive. That account has been documented, witnessed, and sealed in our vaults. Ragnarok paused. I have read it. I wish I had not read it, but I have, and I will not forget it. I don't need pity, Harry said. Quietly, but firmly. Ragnarok looked at him with something that was absolutely, categorically not pity. What I am offering you, Lord Potter-Black-Peverell, is not pity. It is alliance. Your parents were clients of this bank. Your family has banked with us for 7 centuries. Albus Dumbledore has stolen from your vaults, manipulated your legacy, bound your magic, and placed a fragment of a dark wizard's soul in your head. Every one of those actions is an offense against the Goblin Nation, because every one of those actions was carried out against one of our account holders. We do not take this lightly. What are you going to do? Ragnarok smiled. It was the most terrifying smile Harry had ever seen on any face, human or otherwise. We are going to do what goblins do best, Lord Potter. We are going to wage a war. Not with swords and spells, though we have both in abundance, but with contracts, evidence, legal precedent, and the one thing Albus Dumbledore has never had to face in his long and celebrated career. Ragnarok leaned forward. Accountability. He spread a document across the table. Step 1. We unseal the wills of James and Lily Potter. Dumbledore sealed them using his authority as Chief Warlock, but the sealing was illegal. The wills were filed with Gringotts, and Goblin-filed documents cannot be sealed by wizarding authority without our consent, which was never sought or given. We have the originals. We will open them. What do they say? We don't know yet. The seals are bloodlocked to the heirs. Only you can open them. If you're ready. Harry held out his hand. Ragnarok produced 2 scrolls, each sealed with wax that shimmered with embedded magic. Harry pressed his thumb to the first seal and felt a prick, a drop of blood, and the wax dissolved. He unrolled the will of James and Lily Potter and read it with Griphook looking over his shoulder, translating the legal language into plain words. It was straightforward. Everything to Harry. Properties, vaults, heirlooms, seats. Guardianship preferences listed in order: Sirius Black, Godfather, Alice and Frank Longbottom, Amelia Bones, friend of Lily's from the Ministry, Minerva McGonagall. A specific, underlined, magically emphasized note at the bottom: under no circumstances is Harry to be placed with Petunia and Vernon Dursley. Under no circumstances is Albus Dumbledore to be given guardianship, magical or otherwise. We love Albus, but we do not trust his judgment where Harry is concerned. He sees pieces on a board. Our son is not a chess piece. Harry read those words 3 times. His parents had known. They'd known, and they'd tried to protect him, and Dumbledore had sealed their will and done exactly what they'd feared. The second will, Harry said, and his voice was steady, and his magic was very, very still in the way that deep water is still before the current pulls you under. The second scroll, Sirius Black's will, was shorter. Everything to Harry. The Black Lordship, the vaults, the properties. And a note: Harry is my godson and I love him more than anything in this world. If you're reading this, something's happened to me. Moony, look after him. Harry, I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry for everything. Know that your mum and dad loved you, and I loved you, and none of this was ever your fault. P.S. Sirius Orion Black, swear on my magic and my life that I was not the secret keeper for James and Lily Potter. Peter Pettigrew was the secret keeper. I was the decoy. Dumbledore knew this. If I'm in Azkaban as I write this will, it's because nobody bothered to give me a trial, and Dumbledore let it happen. Silence. Griphook broke it. Sirius Black is in Azkaban. Imprisoned without trial for betraying the Potters and murdering Peter Pettigrew and 12 Muggles. This will states he was not the secret keeper. Can this be verified? Ragnarok asked. It's a sworn magical oath embedded in a goblin witnessed will. If it were false, the magic would have killed him when he wrote it. It's genuine. Ragnarok's hands had curled into fists on the table. Dumbledore knew. According to Black's own testimony, Dumbledore knew the truth and allowed an innocent man, the rightful guardian of Harry Potter, to be imprisoned without trial. Because if Sirius Black were free and recognized as my godfather, Harry said slowly, thinking it through, he would have taken me. And Dumbledore wanted me at the Dursleys. He wanted me, he stopped. Thought about the tracking charms. The suppression bind. The male ward. The cupboard under the stairs. The hunger and the hitting and the relentless, grinding message of you are nothing, you are worthless, you are less than nothing. He wanted me broken, Harry said. Nobody in the room contradicted him. Harry set the wills down on the table. He looked at his hands, still too thin, still carrying bruises under the merged lordship ring, but thrumming now with magic that answered to him and him alone. Director Ragnarok, he said, and he was 7 years old, and his voice was steady. I want Sirius Black out of Azkaban. I want Dumbledore held accountable. I want everything that was taken from me returned or answered for. I want the world to know what was done. And I need to learn, everything. Magic, law, politics, how to fight, how to protect myself and the people who should have been protecting me. I need to be ready for whatever comes next. Ragnarok regarded him for a long moment. Then he extended his hand across the table, a gesture of respect between equals, rare from a goblin to any wizard, unprecedented to a child. You have the full resources of the goblin nation behind you, Lord Potter-Black-Peverell. We will teach you. We will arm you. We will stand with you when the time comes to face the man who did this to you. Harry took his hand and shook it. The grip was firm on both sides. One more thing, Ragnarok said. The soul fragment we removed from your scar. We have identified the magical signature. It belongs to a wizard who called himself Lord Voldemort. Harry didn't flinch. Everyone in the room seemed to expect him to, but he didn't. The name meant nothing to him, not yet. It was just a name, and names had no power over you unless you let them. The fragment's existence means that Voldemort created a Horcrux, an anchor for his soul. The piece in your scar was almost certainly unintentional, a byproduct of whatever happened the night your parents died. But if he made one Horcrux, he may have made more. Which means, he's not really dead, Harry said. No. Almost certainly not. Harry absorbed this. A not-dead dark wizard who'd killed his parents. A living, powerful, manipulative old wizard who tried to control his life. And him, 7 years old, with magic like a bonfire and 3 ancient names and a bank full of goblins who had decided he was worth fighting for. Well, Harry said. Then I'd better get started. Late that night, alone in a guest chamber deep in Gringotts, the first room that had ever been truly his, with a bed and clean sheets and a door he could lock from the inside, Harry stood at the window. There was no view. They were underground. The window was enchanted to show whatever you wished, and Harry had wished for the sky, so it showed him stars. He held his hand up in the starlight. The lordship ring caught the light and scattered it into tiny rainbows across the stone walls. His magic moved through him in slow, warm waves, exploring, settling, making itself at home in a body that was finally, fully its own. He thought about his parents. About the words in their will. Our son is not a chess piece. He thought about Sirius Black, rotting in a prison he didn't deserve. He thought about Dumbledore, sitting in his castle, probably wondering right now why his tracking charms had gone silent. Let him wonder, Harry thought. Let him wonder and worry and lose sleep. He pressed his palm flat against the enchanted window and felt his magic respond, a pulse of warmth that rippled out through the glass and made the enchanted stars flare bright. Somewhere above him, in the war room, Ragnarok was speaking to his council. Albus Dumbledore placed 17 tracking charms, a core suppression bind, a male redirect, and a Dark Lord soul fragment on a child in our care, Ragnarok said, and every goblin present was utterly, perfectly still. He stole from that child's vaults. He sealed that child's parents' will. He imprisoned that child's godfather. He placed that child in an abusive home and ensured he could never escape or be found. He did all of this without authority, without oversight, and without consequence. Until tonight. Ragnarok looked around the table at his warriors, his lawyers, his cursebreakers, his bankers. The last time a wizard violated goblin client protections on this scale was 1612, and we burned his estate to the ground and salted the earth. We are a more sophisticated nation now. We will not burn Dumbledore's estate. A pause. We will take it. Legally, publicly, and completely. We will dismantle every structure of power he has built. We will free Sirius Black. We will expose every theft, every lie, every manipulation. And we will do it all in the name of a 7-year-old boy who had the courage to sit in our ritual basin and face more pain in one afternoon than most wizards face in a lifetime, and when it was over, his first words were not "Why me?" but "What's next?" Ragnarok stood. That boy is our client. He is, as of tonight, under the full protection of the Goblin Nation. And Albus Dumbledore has just made the worst enemy we have had reason to unleash in 400 years. Mobilize the legal division. Contact Amelia Bones. Begin the audit of every vault Dumbledore has ever touched. He smiled that terrible smile. We go to war at dawn. In his chamber, Harry felt none of this, heard none of it. He only knew that for the first time in his life, he was warm, and full, and safe, and his magic hummed in his veins like a lullaby. He climbed into the clean bed. Pulled the sheets up to his chin. Closed his eyes. And Harry Potter, Lord Potter-Black-Peverell, heir of 3 ancient houses, owner of a magical core that had broken the goblins' measuring instruments, slept without nightmares for the first time in his memory. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tonight, he rested. Chapter 2, The Education of a Lord. 3 weeks after Harry Potter walked into Gringotts and a different person walked out, Griphook arrived at Potter Cottage at precisely 6 in the morning, as he did every morning, and found his client hanging upside down from the oak tree in the garden. Not falling. Not stuck. Hanging, by choice, 6 feet off the ground, suspended by nothing but his own magic, reading a book. Good morning, Griphook, Harry said without looking up. The book, Foundations of Magical Theory, Volume 1, floated at a convenient angle in front of his face. Lord Potter. You are upside down. I'm practicing. Practicing what, exactly? Holding a sustained levitation charm on myself while simultaneously levitating an external object while reading. Sylvanthorn said my control needs work, and I figured if I can do 3 things at once, one thing should be easy. Griphook stared at him. Harry had been studying magical theory for 19 days. He did not yet own a wand. He was levitating himself and a book through raw, wandless intent, and apparently considered this a training exercise. Your breakfast is on the kitchen table, Griphook said, because he had learned in 3 weeks that reacting to Harry Potter's casual impossibilities only encouraged him. Harry flipped himself right side up with a twist of will, floated gently to the ground, and caught the book out of the air as it dropped. Eggs? And toast and fruit and the nutrient potion Sylvanthorn insists on. Drink all of it this time. She checks. They walked inside together. Potter Cottage was not the destroyed house in Godric's Hollow, that had been a safe house, a temporary shelter during the war. This was a different property entirely, a modest stone cottage on 3 acres of warded land in the Yorkshire Dales, one of 7 Potter properties that the Goblins had reclaimed from illegal ministry seizure in the first week after Harry's emancipation. The wards were old, Potter family wards, blood-keyed, layered over centuries, and the Goblins had reinforced them with their own protections until the cottage sat inside a defensive shell that would give most Auror squads pause. Harry ate his breakfast at the kitchen table while Griphook spread out the day's schedule. The cottage was clean and bright, furnished with pieces that had been in Potter family storage for decades. It wasn't grand. Harry hadn't wanted grand. He'd wanted a home, and this felt like one. Morning schedule, Griphook said, consulting his ever-present scroll. 2 hours of magical theory with me. Then Master Craghammer for combat fundamentals. Is he going to throw knives at me again? Probably. Then lunch, then Goblin Law with Advocate Silvertongue, then an hour of wizarding politics and history with, and I cannot stress enough how much I objected to this, a human tutor. Harry raised an eyebrow over his eggs. You found a human you trust? I found a human I can tolerate for limited periods, which is not the same thing. Andromeda Tonks, née Black. She's your cousin, technically, through the black line. Disowned for marrying a Muggleborn. She's a trained solicitor, knows pureblood politics inside and out, and more importantly, she has no connection to or love for Albus Dumbledore. You checked? I checked her under truth compulsion, reviewed her financial records for the past 15 years, investigated every social and professional contact, and interviewed her daughter, who is 11 and accidentally turned her hair blue during the conversation, which I found deeply unsettling. Harry grinned. It was still a new expression on his face, the muscles for it were out of practice, but it was coming easier now. 3 weeks of regular food, healing potions, and a magic that answered to him had already begun to change him. He was still thin, still small for his age, but the gauntness was fading. The bruises were gone. The broken glasses had been replaced by a pair crafted by goblin artisans that adjusted to his vision automatically and, as a bonus, could see through most standard concealment charms. And this afternoon? Harry asked. Director Ragnarok wants to see you. There's been a development. Harry set down his fork. Serious? He didn't say. But his message had 3 exclamation points, and in the 15 years I've worked at Gringotts, I've never seen Ragnarok use a single one. Magical theory, as taught by a goblin, was nothing like what Harry imagined school to be. Griphook didn't use textbooks as gospel, he used them as starting points and then systematically dismantled their assumptions. Wizarding magical theory, he explained on the first day, was built on the premise that magic was a tool, something external that a wand helped you access and channel. Goblin magical theory began from a fundamentally different place. Magic is not a tool, Griphook said, pacing the cottage's sitting room while Harry sat cross-legged on the floor, the better to feel the magic in the earth beneath the foundations. Magic is a sense. You don't use it any more than you use your eyesight. You see with it. You feel with it. It's part of you. Wizards put a stick between themselves and their magic and then wonder why they can't do what goblins do, what house elves do, what the old wizards could do before wands became standard. Then why do wizards use wands? Because wands make magic easier. They provide focus and amplification. For most wizards, whose cores are modest, a wand is the difference between lighting a candle and not. For you, Griphook paused, choosing his words. For you, a wand will be useful the way a megaphone is useful to someone who can already shout across a valley. It will refine and direct. But your raw power, Lord Potter, does not require a focus. It requires control. So they practiced control. Every morning, for 2 hours, Harry worked on feeling his magic, not forcing it, not commanding it, but cooperating with it. Learning its moods and rhythms, because it did have moods, it did have rhythms. His magic was alive in a way that Griphook said he'd never sensed in another wizard. It responded to his emotions, surging with excitement, roiling with anger, going still and deep with concentration. Harry learned to levitate objects on the first day. By the end of the first week, he could levitate himself. By the end of the second, he could transform small objects, a stone to a button, a leaf to a feather. These were things that Hogwarts students learned over months with wands and incantations. Harry did them through will and intent, the way goblin magic worked, the way the old magic worked. Griphook did not praise him. Goblins were not generous with praise. But on the morning Harry successfully summoned a book from across the room, not with a spell, not with a word, but by simply wanting it and feeling his magic reach out and comply, Griphook paused in his note-taking and said, "Adequate." From Griphook, that was practically a standing ovation. "You said goblin magic works differently from wizard magic," Harry said, floating the book in lazy circles above his head. "How?" "Goblin magic is rooted in the physical world. We are smiths, shapers, builders. Our magic lives in metal and stone and earth. We enchant through crafting. Every goblin-forged blade, every warded vault, every runic structure in Gringotts is goblin magic made physical. We cannot do what wizards do, we cannot transfigure, we cannot conjure from nothing. But what we make lasts. Goblin enchantments endure for millennia. Wizard enchantments fade. And house elf magic? Different again. House elf magic is bonded magic, it draws power from the connection between elf and family. It's the most versatile form of magic in existence, which is why wizards have spent centuries enslaving the species that possesses it." Harry caught the book out of the air. "I have house elves. The inheritance test mentioned Potter family elves. You have 3. They've been in stasis since your parents died, bound to the family magic but unable to serve without a living lord to command them. When you're ready, we can wake them." "I'm ready now." Griphook blinked. "You haven't finished your theory lesson." "Some things matter more than theory, Griphook." The goblin studied him for a moment. Then he reached into his coat. Goblins' coats contained more pockets than should be physically possible, and produced a small bronze bell. "Ring it and speak your family name. The bond will do the rest." Harry took the bell. It was warm, like the lordship ring had been. He rang it, a clear, sweet tone that seemed to hang in the air, and said, "I am Harry James Potter, Lord of House Potter. I call my family's elves." 3 soft pops. They appeared in a line in front of him, 3 house elves, small and large-eared, blinking in the light. 2 were elderly, their skin creased and papery. The third was younger, barely adolescent by elf standards, with enormous green eyes that immediately filled with tears. "Master Harry," the eldest elf whispered. "Master Harry is calling Pippin at last." And then all 3 of them burst into tears. It took Harry 20 minutes to calm them down. The eldest, Pippin, had served James Potter's parents. The middle one, Clover, had been Lily Potter's personal elf, bonded to her when she married into the family. The youngest, Twig, had been born into the Potter family bond the year Harry was born and had never served a living master. They told him everything. How the bond had gone dormant the night James and Lily died. How they'd felt Harry, distantly, faintly, through the suppression bind, and tried to reach him, but something blocked them. How they'd waited, for 6 years, in a kind of twilight, unable to act, unable to help, feeling their young master's pain through the bond like echoes of a scream heard through deep water. Harry listened. He sat on the floor and let Clover hold his hand. Her fingers were tiny and trembling and she kept touching his face like she couldn't believe he was real, and he listened. "I'm sorry," he said, when they'd finished. "I'm sorry you had to wait so long." Pippin drew himself up to his full height, which brought his head roughly to Harry's knee. "Master Harry is not to be sorry. Master Harry is to be giving Pippin orders. Pippin is to be serving. Pippin is needing to be serving. 6 years of no service, Pippin is going mad. Can I ask you something first?" "Anything, Master Harry." "Do you want to be free? The goblins told me about house elf bonds. If you'd rather not be bound." The reaction was immediate and volcanic. All 3 elves recoiled as if he'd suggested they set themselves on fire. Twig, the youngest, actually hid behind Clover. "Master Harry is not understanding," Pippin said, and his voice was firm in a way that surprised Harry. "The bond is not chains. The bond is home. When a good family bonds an elf, it is, it is like, he struggled. Master Harry's magic. When the bad magic was removed. Master Harry felt his magic for the first time, yes. Felt it come alive. Yes, Harry said softly. That is what the bond is for elves. It is our magic finding its home. Without the bond, an elf's magic turns inward, hurts us, breaks us apart. Bad masters make bad bonds, and that is wrong, that is cruelty. But a good bond, a Potter bond, is everything. Pippin placed his small hand over his chest. Pippin felt Master Harry claim the lordship. Pippin felt it like sunrise after 6 years of dark. Please, Master Harry. Do not free Pippin. Let Pippin serve. Harry looked at the three of them, loyal, fierce, devoted to a family that had treated them as family in return. Then welcome home, he said. All three of you. 3 pops of apparition as the elves scattered to begin doing what house elves did, Pippin to inspect the cottage's defenses, Clover to the kitchen to begin preparing a proper meal, not this goblin-arranged nonsense, and Twig to Harry's bedroom to organize the wardrobe that still consisted largely of Dudley's hand-me-downs. Griphook, who had watched the entire exchange from the corner with his arms folded, said nothing for a long moment. What? Harry asked. You sat on the floor with them. They're shorter than me. It's rude to make people crane their necks. Most wizards don't extend that courtesy to house elves. Most wizards don't extend that courtesy to goblins. Harry shrugged. Most wizards sound like terrible people. Griphook made a sound that might, generously, have been called a laugh. Back to theory, Lord Potter. Combat training with Master Craghammer was Harry's favorite part of the day, which said something about his personality that Griphook found concerning but tactically useful. Craghammer was old. Not old like Pippin, old like the stone in the deep tunnels of Gringotts, worn smooth by centuries. He was the Goblin Nation's weapons master, retired from active duty but called back by Ragnarok's personal request because, as Ragnarok put it, if we are going to war, our client needs to survive it. He didn't coddle Harry. On the first day, he'd thrown a wooden training knife at Harry's head without warning. Harry's magic had caught it an inch from his eye, freezing it in midair. Good reflexes, Craghammer had said. Your magic protects you instinctively. Now we make that instinct precise. They trained in the cottage's garden, which Craghammer had expanded with goblin spatial magic into a training ground the size of a football pitch, invisible to anyone outside the wards. Harry learned footwork first, how to move, how to dodge, how to make himself a difficult target. Then magical shielding, not with wand-based protego charms but with raw intent, shaping his magic into barriers and deflections. Your magic is a weapon and a shield, Craghammer told him, circling while Harry maintained a shimmering dome of force around himself. Most wizards think of offense and defense as separate. They are not. The same power that blocks a curse can be turned back on the caster. Watch. He hurled a goblin-forged training bolt, a blunted metal projectile that hit like a bludger, at Harry's shield. Harry caught it, felt the impact ripple through his magic, and pushed back. The bolt reversed direction and shot back at Craghammer, who deflected it with a gauntlet inscribed with runes. Better. Again. Faster. 3 bolts this time. Harry caught all 3, held them vibrating against his shield for a fraction of a second, then hurled them back in different trajectories. 2 hit the targets Craghammer had set up behind him. The 3rd clipped Craghammer's shoulder. The old goblin grinned. Goblin grins were not comforting. Much better. Your instinct is to absorb and redirect. Good. Some wizards try to overpower incoming attacks, wasteful, arrogant. You take what is given and send it back. That is goblin philosophy. My parents, Harry said, dropping his shield and wiping sweat from his forehead. Did they fight? In the war. Craghammer's grin faded into something more complex. Your father was an Auror. A good one, by human standards. Fast, creative, reckless. Your mother was a charms prodigy, one of the few humans I've heard goblins speak of with respect. She invented protections. Shields, wards, concealment structures. The Fidelius charm that hid your family was her casting. But it failed. The charm didn't fail. The secret keeper betrayed them. The magic was sound. The people were not. Craghammer picked up a training staff. This is why we train. Magic can be perfect. People never are. You must be strong enough that when people fail you, and they will, you survive it. He swung the staff at Harry without further warning, and the lesson continued. Andromeda Tonks arrived at 3 o'clock, precisely on time, and Harry decided within 5 minutes that he liked her. She was tall, with dark hair and the kind of face that had been built for aristocratic disdain but had chosen warmth instead. She carried herself like someone who'd grown up in a noble house and walked away from it, straight-backed but not stiff, proud but not cold. "So you're the young lord who's got the goblins doing something that isn't hoarding gold," she said, shaking his hand. "I'm your cousin." "Sort of. The Black family tree is more of a tangle, really. Griphook says you were disowned. For marrying a Muggleborn, yes. Ted Tonks. Best thing I ever did. My sister Narcissa still sends passive-aggressive Christmas cards. My other sister Bellatrix tried to kill me twice, but she's in Azkaban, so that's settled." She said all of this with the casual air of someone describing the weather. "I'm told you need to learn how the wizarding world actually works, as opposed to how it's supposed to work. Is there a big difference?" "Enormous. Sit down, cousin. We've got a lot of ground to cover." She was a good teacher, sharp, funny, impatient with stupidity but patient with genuine ignorance. She taught Harry about the Wizengamot, how it functioned, who sat on it, where the power blocks were, who could be trusted, a short list, and who couldn't, everyone else. She taught him about the ministry, its departments, its bureaucracies, its blind spots. She taught him about pure-blood society, the old families, their alliances, their feuds, their obsession with blood status. "The Wizengamot is split roughly 3 ways, she explained, sketching a diagram on parchment. The traditionalists, old families, mostly pure-blood supremacists, some reformed Death Eaters who bought their way out of Azkaban. They want the old ways, which means no Muggleborn rights, no creature rights, no change. Then the progressives, smaller group, led nominally by Dumbledore, though his version of progress is mostly just his own agenda wrapped in nice words. And the neutrals, the largest bloc, who vote whichever way the wind blows because it's easier than having convictions. And I have 3 seats. You have 3 seats, which makes you one of the most powerful individual voting blocs in the Wizengamot before you've cast a single vote. The Potter seat has historically been progressive-leaning. The Black seat was traditionalist until Sirius. The Peverell seat hasn't been active in 7 centuries, so it's a wild card. When you walk in there, and you will, eventually, you'll reshape the entire power dynamic just by sitting down. What about Dumbledore? How much power does he have?" Andromeda's expression shifted. She set down her quill. "A lot. More than most people realize. He's chief warlock of the Wizengamot, which means he controls the agenda, what gets debated, what gets voted on, what gets buried. He's supreme mugwump of the International Confederation of Wizards, which gives him international influence. He's headmaster of Hogwarts, which means he shapes the education of every witch and wizard in Britain. And he's Albus Dumbledore, the man who defeated Grindelwald, the only wizard Voldemort feared. His reputation is his greatest weapon. People believe in him. They trust him. They defer to him. Questioning Dumbledore, for most people, is like questioning gravity. And you? Do you trust him?" Andromeda met his eyes. "I trusted him when I was young. When I left the Black family, he was one of the few who offered support. But I've watched him for 20 years since, and I've seen the pattern. Dumbledore helps people who are useful to him. He positions people where he needs them. He keeps secrets and calls it protection. He makes decisions for others and calls it wisdom. She paused. When I heard what the goblins found on you, the tracking charms, the suppression bind, I wasn't surprised. Horrified, yes. But not surprised. That's a damning thing to say. It's an honest thing to say. And I'd rather be your honest cousin than your comfortable one. Harry leaned back in his chair and looked at her. Griphook vetted you. Truth compulsion, financial records, the whole thing. I know. I volunteered for it. I wanted you to know you could trust me without reservation. The goblins are thorough, but they don't understand wizard society from the inside. You need someone who does. Someone who grew up in it and chose to leave it and can show you where the bodies are buried. She smiled thinly. Some of them literally. Will you tell me about Sirius? What he was like? Andromeda's face softened. He was the bravest person I ever knew. And the most reckless. He ran away from home at 16, the Black family home was a nightmare, and Sirius was the only one of us who had the courage to say so out loud. He went to your father. James Potter took him in without hesitation. They were brothers in everything but blood. The goblins are working on getting him a trial. I know. And when they do, I'll testify. I'll tell them exactly what kind of man Sirius Black is, and I'll ask them why no one bothered to check before they threw him in hell. Something passed between them, a shared anger, a shared determination. Harry nodded once. Same time tomorrow? Andromeda asked. Same time tomorrow. And Andromeda, thank you. For being honest. She gathered her things. At the door, she paused. Harry. One more thing. My daughter, Nymphadora, she goes by Tonks, do not call her Nymphadora, she's going to Hogwarts in September. She's a metamorphmagus, changes her appearance at will, and she's the clumsiest person alive. She's going to hear about you eventually. I'd like you to know her. I'd like that too. After she left, Griphook emerged from wherever he'd been listening. Harry didn't bother asking if he'd been eavesdropping, of course he had. Your assessment? Griphook asked. She's genuine. She's smart. And she's angry about the same things we're angry about. Agreed on all three counts. I still find humans generally untrustworthy, but she is an acceptable exception. High praise from you. Don't push it. They went to Gringotts that evening through a direct portal the goblins had established in the cottage's cellar, a door-sized sheet of stone that rippled like water when Harry pressed his lordship ring to it and deposited them in a private corridor deep in the bank. Ragnarok was waiting in his office, and he was not alone. A woman stood beside the director's desk, tall, square-jawed, with a monocle over one eye and an air of authority that had nothing to do with her clothing and everything to do with the way she held herself. She wore formal robes of deep burgundy, and her wand was visible at her hip in a way that said I am armed and you should know it. Lord Potter-Black-Peverell, Ragnarok said, and there was a current of energy in his voice that Harry had learned to associate with significant news. Allow me to introduce Amelia Bones, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Harry extended his hand. Madam Bones. She shook it, studying him with frank curiosity. Lord Potter. You're younger than I expected. Though I'm not sure what I expected. Someone taller, probably. Her lips twitched. Your mother had the same sense of humor. Lily Evans could cut you to ribbons with a joke and leave you laughing about it. She turned to Ragnarok. You were right, Director. Now show me everything. Ragnarok gestured, and a goblin aide began placing files on the desk. Thick, organized, meticulously documented. Harry recognized them. The Goblins' legal team had been building this case for 3 weeks, and every document had been reviewed, cross-referenced, and notarized under Goblin law. The tracking charms, Ragnarok began. 17. Self-renewing, placed on a minor without legal authorization. Each one a separate violation of the Magical Minors Protection Act of 1847 and the Goblin Wizard Treaty of 1497, Article 12, which prohibits magical interference with the person of a Gringotts account holder without documented consent. The suppression bind, he continued, opening a second file. Class 4 Core Suppression, placed November 1, 1981, on a child of 15 months. This alone carries a mandatory sentence of 10 years in Azkaban under the Magical Core Protection Statutes. The Mail Redirection Ward. All correspondence addressed to Harry Potter, including official Wisengamot notifications, Gringotts statements, and personal letters, redirected to Albus Dumbledore's office at Hogwarts. This constitutes mail fraud, interference with Gringotts communications, a treaty violation, and suppression of official government correspondence. The financial irregularities. A third file, thicker than the others. 27 unauthorized access events to the Potter Trust Vault. Annual withdrawals of 50,000 galleons from the Potter family vault to a Hogwarts fund with no oversight or documentation. Assumption of vault management proxy without authorization. Total estimated misappropriation, approximately 480,000 galleons. The sealed wills. A fourth file. The last will and testament of James and Lily Potter, and the last will and testament of Sirius Black, sealed by Dumbledore using Chief Warlock authority over Goblin-filed documents, an action that has no legal basis whatsoever and which directly enabled the illegal placement of Harry Potter with his Muggle relatives, in explicit violation of his parents' documented wishes. And the soul fragment. Ragnarok's voice dropped. A piece of Voldemort's soul, embedded in the child's scar, feeding on his magical core. We cannot prove Dumbledore placed it there. But we can prove he was aware of its presence. Our curse breakers have confirmed that the tracking charms were layered specifically to monitor the fragment's stability. He was watching it. Studying it. Using a child as a container for a dark artifact. Amelia Bones had gone very still. Her monocle had fogged and she removed it, cleaned it, replaced it with hands that were not entirely steady. You have evidence for all of this, she said. Not a question. Preserved spell signatures, ritual extraction records, financial audit trails, the unsealed wills as testimony, and the medical report documenting Lord Potter's physical condition at the time of his arrival at Gringotts. Ragnarok paused. The medical report, Madam Bones, details 6 years of systematic physical abuse and neglect. Malnutrition. Untreated fractures. Bruising consistent with repeated blows. A 7-year-old child who weighed less than the average 5-year-old. Amelia looked at Harry. He looked back at her steadily. He didn't flinch from her gaze and he didn't perform suffering for her sympathy. Lord Potter, she said. I knew your parents. Lily was one of my closest friends at the ministry. She asked me, once, if I would look after you if anything happened to her and James. I said yes. I was on the guardianship list in her will. I know, Harry said. I read the will. Then you know I failed you. I should have asked questions when Dumbledore announced you'd been placed with relatives. I should have checked. I should have, Madam Bones. Harry's voice was quiet but it carried. You didn't know the will existed. Dumbledore sealed it before anyone could read it. You didn't fail me. He did. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she straightened, spine, shoulders, jaw, and turned back to Ragnarok. File everything. I'll issue sealed warrants for a full investigation under DMLE authority. We keep this quiet until the evidence is ironclad. Dumbledore has allies everywhere, and if he gets wind of this before we're ready, he'll bury it. There's one more matter, Ragnarok said. Sirius Black. He pushed the 5th file across the desk. Amelia opened it, read Black's will with its sworn magical oath, and the color drained from her face. No trial, she said. Merlin, I was junior staff in 81, I just assumed, no trial, Ragnarok confirmed. No hearing. No evidence review. No veritaserum. Bartemius Crouch signed an emergency detention order and Dumbledore, as Chief Warlock, countersigned it. Sirius Black has been in Azkaban for 6 years based on nothing but assumption and the signature of 2 men, one of whom knew the truth. Amelia closed the file. Her hand was shaking now, but her voice was iron. I'll have a trial ordered within the week. Emergency session, sealed courtroom, full Wisengamot attendance required. And Ragnarok, I want veritaserum administered to Black. If he's innocent, I want it proven beyond any shadow of doubt, because when this goes public, Dumbledore will fight it with everything he has. Agreed. Ragnarok looked at Harry. Lord Potter. Sirius Black will likely be brought to trial within days. If he is exonerated, he'll need somewhere to recover, Harry said. The cottage has room. I want him here. He will be damaged, Ragnarok said carefully. 6 years with the Dementors, then he'll need family more than ever. He's my godfather. He's the guardian my parents chose. And he's been in that place for 6 years for a crime he didn't commit because of the same man who locked me in a cupboard. He's coming here, Ragnarok. That's not a request. The director inclined his head. As you wish, Lord Potter. Amelia gathered the files. At the door of Ragnarok's office, she stopped. Lord Potter. You should know, Dumbledore has already begun searching for you. He's been making inquiries through the ministry. Quiet ones, but I have people who report to me. He knows you're gone from Privet Drive and he's unsettled. Harry smiled. It wasn't a child's smile. It was the smile of a young lord who had 3 ancient houses behind him, a goblin nation at his back, and a burning, luminous fury that he had transmuted into patience. Let him search, Harry said. He won't find me until I want to be found. And when I do, he's going to wish he hadn't. Amelia Bones looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once, sharply, and left. For days later, Harry was in the middle of his morning training with Craghammer, deflecting 6 simultaneous projectiles while maintaining a shield over a target dummy behind him, which Craghammer insisted represented someone you care about, someone you must protect while fighting, when Griphook appeared at the edge of the training ground with an expression Harry had never seen on him before. Harry dropped his shield and the projectiles clattered to the ground. What happened? Sirius Black's trial was this morning. Sealed session, Wisengamot Courtroom 10. Harry's heart hammered. And? Griphook's expression resolved. It was not triumph, exactly. It was something quieter, something that looked like justice. Veritaserum confirmed everything. Black was not the secret keeper. Peter Pettigrew was. Black was imprisoned without trial on false charges. The Wisengamot voted unanimously for immediate release and full exoneration. Harry's legs went weak. He sat down in the grass, hard, and his magic surged out of him in an uncontrolled pulse that made every blade of grass within 10 feet grow 6 inches. Where is he? St. Mungo's. He's in bad shape, Harry. 6 years of Dementors, it's not something you walk away from. He's emaciated, partly incoherent, and he has episodes of absence. But he's alive. He's free. And he's been told about you. What did he say? Griphook consulted his scroll. According to the healer's report, when informed that his godson was safe, healthy, and had claimed the Potter-Black-Peverell lordship at age 7 after the goblins removed 17 tracking charms, a suppression bind, and a Dark Lord's soul fragment from his person, Sirius Black said, and I quote, "That's my boy," and then cried for 40 minutes. Harry laughed. The sound was wet and raw and not entirely a laugh. When can I see him? The healers say 3 days minimum. He needs stabilization. But Ragnarok has arranged for a private wing at St. Mungo's, paid from the Black Vaults, which you now control, with goblin security supplementing the hospital's wards. No one gets in or out without our knowledge. Dumbledore will try to see him. Dumbledore has been formally barred from contact with Sirius Black by order of the DMLE, pending investigation into his role in Black's imprisonment. Amelia Bones signed the order herself. Harry stared up at the sky. Blue and clear, with thin clouds streaking east. Somewhere in London, a man who'd been rotting in prison for 6 years was free, and somewhere in Scotland, another man was realizing that his carefully constructed world was beginning to crack. Grip hook. Yes. Thank you. For everything. I know this started as a business arrangement, client protections, treaty violations, all of that. But you've been more than a banker to me. Grip hook was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost its usual sardonic edge. When I saw you in Gringotts that first day, a half-starved child in rags, wrapped in 17 kinds of someone else's magic, I felt something I had not felt in many years working in that bank. I felt angry. Not professionally offended. Angry. On your behalf. He adjusted his coat. Goblins do not make friends with wizards. It is not done. But I find myself willing to make an exception. Harry held out his hand. Griphook looked at it. Then he shook it, firmly. Don't let it go to your head, Griphook added. I still think humans are mostly terrible. Fair enough. Craghammer, who had been standing to the side with his arms crossed, cleared his throat. Touching. Pick up your shield. We have 2 more hours. Harry got to his feet, grinning, and the training resumed. He visited Sirius on the 4th day. Griphook, Craghammer, and 2 goblin warriors escorted him through the portal to Gringotts, and from there through a secure Floo connection to St. Mungo's private wing. Harry wore robes for the first time, proper robes, tailored by goblin hands, in deep green that matched his eyes, with the Potter-Black-Peverell crest embroidered on the breast. He looked, for the first time, like what he was. The private wing was quiet. Goblin guards flanked the corridor. A healer met them at the door, a tired-looking woman named Meadows who briefed Harry in low tones. He's lucid today. That's good, he has bad days and good days. He knows you're coming and he's been trying to comb his hair for the last hour, which the nurses find encouraging because it means he cares about something. She hesitated. He'll look rough, Lord Potter. Azkaban takes a toll that's difficult to describe. I understand. He may cry. He may not recognize you at first. He may, Healer Meadows. Harry met her eyes. He's my godfather. I'm not afraid of what Azkaban did to him. I'm here because someone should have been here 6 years ago. She nodded and opened the door. The room was sunlit, charmed windows showing a garden that didn't exist. Sirius Black sat on the edge of the bed, and Harry's first thought was he looks like a ghost. Gaunt, far gaunter than Harry had been, with hollowed cheeks and grey-streaked hair that fell past his shoulders. His eyes were sunk deep in their sockets, and they had a look that Harry recognized from his own mirror, the look of someone who'd been in the dark so long they'd forgotten what light was supposed to feel like. But when those eyes found Harry, they blazed. Harry. Sirius's voice was a ruin, cracked, hoarse, barely audible. Harry. Hi, Sirius. You look, Sirius's face crumpled. He pressed his hands over his mouth, pressing back the sound that wanted to come out, and his shoulders shook. You look like James. You have Lily's eyes. God, you have her eyes. Harry crossed the room and sat on the bed next to him. Griphook told me what you said when they told you about me. That's my boy. You are. Sirius's hands dropped from his face. Tears tracked down his hollow cheeks but his voice steadied. You are my boy. You were my boy from the moment James put you in my arms and you grabbed my finger and wouldn't let go. Harry, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have been there. I should have, you didn't do anything wrong. You were betrayed. You were imprisoned without a trial. And the man who could have stopped it chose not to. Dumbledore. Sirius's expression darkened. The gauntness of his face made the change more dramatic, shadows deepening, jaw tightening. I used to admire him, you know. Trusted him completely. We all did. And then I was in Azkaban and he never came. Not once. He knew about the switch, about Peter, and he never came. He's going to answer for it, Harry said. All of it. The Goblins have built a case that will tear his reputation apart. Sirius stared at him. You're 7. I'm aware. You talk like you're 30. I've had an intensive education. The Goblins are very efficient. A laugh, broken, rusty, but real. James would have loved this. His son, lording it over the Goblins at 7. Lily would have been terrified. The laugh faded. Harry. What they did to you, the Dursleys, the cupboard, all of it, I read the report. The Goblins sent it to me as part of my briefing and his hands clenched in the bedsheets. I will kill them. You won't. Harry's voice was calm. Because you're free, and I need you free, and if you go after the Dursleys, you give Dumbledore ammunition. The Goblins have handled it. Petunia signed away her guardianship. The Dursleys can't touch me. What I need from you, Sirius, isn't vengeance. It's family. Sirius looked at him with those hollow, burning eyes, and Harry saw the moment something shifted, something foundational, something that had been broken in Azkaban finding a reason to start mending. Family, Sirius repeated. I have a cottage. In Yorkshire. It's got room. When the healers say you're ready, now. Sirius, I have spent 6 years in a cell, Harry. I have spent 6 years listening to Dementors and reliving the worst moments of my life on loop. I am leaving this hospital and I am going with my godson, and if any healer, goblin, or ministry official tries to stop me, I will bite them. I can turn into a dog, you know. It's a whole thing. Harry looked at Griphook, who was standing in the doorway. Griphook looked at the ceiling. I'll arrange a healer for home visits, Griphook said. And stock the potions cabinet. And reinforce the wards, since apparently we're doing this today. We're doing this today, Harry confirmed. Sirius stood. He swayed, caught himself on the bed frame, and straightened. He was taller than Harry had expected, even stooped and wasted. He'd been a big man, once. Lead the way, Lord Potter-Black-Peverell. The name was half teasing, half odd. Take me home. The adjustment was not smooth. Harry hadn't expected it to be. Sirius had nightmares. Violent ones, full of screaming, that woke Harry in the small hours even through 2 walls. Harry would pad down the corridor in bare feet and find Sirius rigid in his bed, eyes wide, seeing things that weren't there, and Harry would sit beside him and put a hand on his arm and say, "You're in Yorkshire. You're safe. I'm here," until the shaking stopped. Sometimes Sirius didn't recognize him. Sometimes he called Harry James and talked to him about Quidditch plans and people Harry didn't know. Sometimes he went quiet for hours, sitting in the garden with the 1,000-yard stare of a man whose soul had been gnawed on by Dementors for 6 years. But there were good hours too. Hours when Sirius was present, sharp, alive with a manic energy that Andromeda said was exactly like he used to be, except more so. He told Harry stories, about James's terrible jokes, about Lily's temper, about the Marauders and their misadventures. He transformed into Padfoot, a massive black dog, and romped around the garden until he collapsed, panting and laughing in his human form. He ate Clover's cooking with the desperate gratitude of a man who'd lived on gruel for half a decade. And he watched Harry train. The first time Sirius saw Harry deflect one of Craghammer's projectiles with wandless magic, he went very quiet. The first time he saw Harry levitate the cottage's kitchen table while simultaneously transfiguring a stone into a perfect replica of a chess piece, his mouth fell open. The first time he saw Harry, frustrated with a particularly stubborn magical theory problem, accidentally set the garden shed on fire with a burst of raw power and then extinguish it with a wave of his hand without breaking his conversation with Griphook, Sirius sat down heavily on the garden bench and said, "Moony is going to lose his mind." "Moony?" Harry asked. "Remus Lupin. Our friend. Your honorary uncle. I need to find him, Harry. He doesn't know about any of this. He thinks I'm a murderer and he thinks you're safe with the Dursleys and he's out there somewhere, alone, and, write to him," Harry said. "Use the Potter family owl. Dumbledore can't intercept mail that goes through goblin-warded channels." Sirius wrote the letter that night. It took him 4 hours and 7 drafts. Harry didn't ask what it said. 3 days later, on the morning of Harry's 8th birthday, a tired-looking man in patched robes appeared at the cottage's ward line, clutching a letter and looking like he'd been crying for the better part of a week. Sirius met him at the gate, and Remus Lupin said, "Padfoot," and Sirius said, "Moony," and they held each other for a very long time. Harry watched from the kitchen window and felt his magic hum warm and steady in his chest. Family, he thought. So this is what it feels like. He turned back to the kitchen table, where Griphook had spread out a new set of documents. "Happy birthday, Lord Potter," Griphook said. "Your present is the preliminary audit results from Dumbledore's Hogwarts accounts. The financial irregularities extend far beyond your vaults. He's been skimming from at least 12 other trust funds belonging to orphan children of the war. The total misappropriation is," he checked his figures, "approximately 3 million galleons." Harry looked at the numbers. 12 families. 12 orphans like him, robbed by the man who was supposed to protect them. "File it," Harry said. "Add it to the case. Every single one. Already done. And Griphook, contact those families. The ones who are still alive. They deserve to know." Griphook made a note. "Anything else?" Through the window, Harry could see Sirius and Remus walking in the garden, talking, 2 broken men slowly putting each other back together. In the kitchen, Clover was baking a birthday cake and crying happy tears into the batter. Twig was hanging decorations with a meticulousness that bordered on obsessive. Pippin was polishing silver and humming a tune that Harry's father had apparently loved. "Yes," Harry said. "One more thing. I want to see the Wizengamot. Not to speak. Not yet. I want to watch a session. I want to see how they operate, who sits where, who talks to whom, who Dumbledore looks at when he wants a vote to go his way. I want to understand the battlefield before I step onto it." Griphook's quill paused. He looked up at Harry, 8 years old today, standing in the kitchen of his family home in robes that fit him properly, magic coiling around him like a living cloak, eyes bright and hard and certain. "I'll arrange it," Griphook said. "Observation gallery, under goblin concealment charms. He won't know you're there." "Oh, eventually he'll know," Harry said. "Eventually, I'm going to walk into that chamber and sit in all 3 of my seats and look him in the eye. And he's going to realize that every single thing he did to control me, every charm, every bind, every stolen galleon, every sealed will, all of it created exactly the thing he was trying to prevent." "And what's that?" Harry smiled. Griphook noticed that the room temperature had risen by several degrees. "Someone who isn't afraid of him." From the garden, laughter, Sirius's laughter, rough and amused but real. Remus's voice, lower, steadier. The sounds of people healing. Harry listened, and his magic sang, and the merged ring on his finger caught the light, and somewhere in Scotland, in a tower office full of silver instruments, a very old man with a very long beard noticed that yet another of his carefully maintained monitoring devices had gone dark. Albus Dumbledore sat alone in his office and stared at the blank device and felt, for the first time in a very long time, the cold touch of uncertainty. He didn't know where Harry Potter was. He didn't know what Harry Potter had become. But he was beginning, just beginning, to be afraid. Chapter 3, The world will know his name. Albus Dumbledore had not slept properly in 6 weeks. He stood at the window of his tower office, looking out over the Hogwarts grounds without seeing them. The late autumn light painted everything in amber and rust, and the Black Lake was a sheet of hammered bronze in the distance, and none of it registered. His mind was elsewhere, tangled in the fraying threads of a plan that had taken him 6 years to weave and was now unraveling faster than he could mend it. The monitoring instruments were all dark. Every single one, the silver spinners that tracked Harry's location, the crystalline sphere that measured the stability of the soul fragment, the delicate brass device that confirmed the suppression bind was holding, the small mirror that showed a blurry image of number 4, Privet Drive. Dark. Dead. Silent. They had gone dark 6 weeks ago, all at once, in the span of a single afternoon, and no amount of diagnostic magic had been able to tell him why. He had sent Mundungus Fletcher to Privet Drive. Mundungus had reported that the boy was gone. Petunia Dursley had refused to say where, refused to say when, refused to say anything at all except, "He's not our problem anymore," before slamming the door. The blood wards around the house, Dumbledore's masterwork, anchored to Lily's sacrifice, were still technically active but thinning, as if the sacrifice's power was being drawn away to some other purpose. He had made discreet inquiries at the ministry. No one had filed for custody of Harry Potter. No one had reported a missing child. The Muggle authorities had no record of Harry Potter at all, his existence in their systems had been quietly erased, which spoke of either goblin intervention or very sophisticated magical legal work or both. The Goblins. That thought kept circling back. The Goblins had been making movements, sealed legal filings, closed-door consultations with the DMLE, an audit of Hogwarts-related accounts that Dumbledore's contacts at Gringotts had been unable to provide details about because, they said nervously, the audit was being conducted at the director level and no one below Director Ragnarok had access. And then, 3 weeks ago, Sirius Black had been given a trial. Dumbledore had not been informed in advance. He had learned about it from the Daily Prophet like everyone else, and the article, front page, above the fold, written by a reporter who had clearly been given exclusive access to the proceedings, had hit him like a bludgeon to the chest. Sirius Black exonerated, imprisoned 6 years without trial. Veritaserum confirms, Peter Pettigrew was true secret keeper. Chief Warlock signature on detention order under review. He had gone to the ministry that afternoon. Amelia Bones had refused to see him. Her secretary, a young woman with a flat expression and zero deference, had informed him that Madame Bones was unavailable and that any inquiries regarding the Black case should be directed to the DMLE's legal department, who would respond within 10 to 15 business days. He had gone to Gringotts. The Goblins at the front desk had smiled at him, smiled, with teeth, and informed him that his access to the Potter vaults had been revoked, his management proxy had been rescinded, and any further attempts to access accounts not belonging to him would be treated as attempted theft under Goblin law. When he'd asked to speak with Director Ragnarok, they'd laughed. Actually laughed, out loud, in the middle of the banking hall, and 2 nearby witches had stared. Dumbledore was not accustomed to being laughed at. He was not accustomed to being refused. He was not accustomed to being afraid. And he was afraid now, not of a Dark Lord, not of an enemy he could see and strategize against, but of an absence. A gap where Harry Potter should be and wasn't. A void in his carefully constructed web that was spreading, widening, pulling other threads loose as it grew. Fawkes trilled softly from his perch. The phoenix had been subdued lately, watching Dumbledore with an unblinking gaze that felt, uncomfortably, like judgment. "I did what was necessary," Dumbledore said to the bird. He said it often, these days. The prophecy, Fawkes turned his head away. Dumbledore closed his eyes. Opened them. Turned from the window. There was a Wisengamot session tomorrow, emergency session, called by Amelia Bones, topic unspecified. He had tried to access the agenda and been told it was sealed. He had tried to use his authority as chief warlock to unseal it and been informed, by a ministry clerk who wouldn't meet his eyes, that the session had been called under Article 47 of the Wisengamot Charter, which allowed the head of the DMLE to convene an emergency session with a sealed agenda that the chief warlock could not override or access in advance. Article 47 had been invoked 3 times in the last 2 centuries. Twice for Dark Lord emergencies. Once for the trial of a sitting minister. Tomorrow. Whatever was coming, it was coming tomorrow. Dumbledore sat at his desk, among his dark instruments and his silent monitors, and waited for morning. Harry woke before dawn. He lay in bed for a moment, feeling his magic move through him, that warm, steady pulse that had become as familiar as his heartbeat over the past weeks. Through the walls, he could feel the cottage's wards, humming with protective energy. Through the bond, he could feel the house elves, Pippin on watch downstairs, Clover already in the kitchen, Twig arranging something in the sitting room. Through the door of his bedroom, he could hear Sirius snoring. Harry smiled in the dark. The snoring was a good sign. On bad nights, Sirius didn't snore, he whimpered, or went deathly silent, or screamed. Snoring meant a peaceful night. They were becoming more frequent. He dressed carefully. The robes Griphook had commissioned for today were different from his everyday wear, formal, black, cut close and precise, with the Potter-Black-Peverell crest in silver thread on the left breast. The lordship ring gleamed on his finger, catching light that shouldn't have existed in the pre-dawn dimness. He went downstairs. Pippin had laid out breakfast, light, as Harry had requested. His stomach was knotted with something that wasn't quite nerves. Anticipation, maybe. He'd been building toward this day for 6 weeks. Sirius was already at the table, which surprised Harry. His godfather was not a morning person. But Sirius was dressed, properly dressed, in robes that Andromeda had helped him select, dark gray, elegant in a way that suited his gaunt frame and made him look not wasted but sharp. He'd cut his hair 2 days ago, at Remus's gentle suggestion, and it fell to his jaw now, still streaked with premature gray but clean and combed. "You look like a lord," Harry said. "I look like a man who hasn't slept." Sirius's eyes were bright despite the shadows under them. "But thank you. You look, Harry, you look like your dad walking into the Wisengamot for the first time." James was 21 and terrified and didn't show it for a second. "Are you terrified?" "For you." "Always." "Of you?" "Increasingly." Harry sat down. Ate a piece of toast. Drank the nutrient potion that Sylvanthorn still insisted on. Outside, the sky was lightening toward gray. "Remus wanted to come," Sirius said. "I know. But it's the full moon in 2 days and he needs to rest. This is going to be long. He told me to tell you, what was it, give them hell with impeccable grammar." "That's very Remus." Griphook arrived at 6, stepping through the cellar portal with his usual lack of ceremony. He was followed by 2 goblin warriors in ceremonial armor, polished black steel inlaid with silver runes, and a goblin Harry hadn't met before, older than Griphook, wearing the formal robes of a Gringotts legal advocate. "Lord Potter," Griphook said. "This is Senior Advocate Razorclaw, who will be presenting the legal case before the Wisengamot." "Razorclaw, Lord Potter-Black-Peverell." Razorclaw inclined his head. He had the eyes of a surgeon, precise, clinical, capable of cutting without emotion. "Lord Potter. I've reviewed the case files extensively. Our documentation is flawless. The evidence is overwhelming. The only variable today is the human one." "Meaning?" "Meaning Dumbledore. His reputation is his armor. When we present the evidence, his first defense will not be denial, the evidence is too strong for that. It will be justification. The greater good. The prophecy. The war. He will frame every action as a necessary sacrifice and himself as the only man wise enough to make it. Half the Wisengamot will want to believe him because the alternative, that they've trusted a man who would do this to a child, is too frightening to accept. So we don't give them the option of looking away," Harry said. "Precisely. Andromeda arrived at 6:30, flew into the sitting room in formal robes of dark blue. She'd been briefed on the plan. She would sit in the public gallery with Remus, who had decided to come after all despite Harry's protest, and provide a familiar face in the crowd. Nymphadora wanted to come, Andromeda said. I told her no. She's 11 and if she sees Dumbledore she'll try to hex him, and while I appreciate the impulse, it would complicate our legal strategy. Noted, Griphook said drily. At 7, they gathered in the sitting room. Harry, Sirius, Griphook, Razorclaw, the 2 goblin warriors. Andromeda and Remus stood off to the side. They'd be entering the Wizengamot separately, through the public gallery entrance. The session is called for 9 o'clock, Griphook said. We'll arrive at the Ministry at 8:30, through the Goblin diplomatic entrance, which bypasses the main atrium and the press. We don't want the Daily Prophet getting to you before you've spoken to the Wizengamot. After, though, Harry said. After, they'll be fighting each other for the story. Razorclaw has prepared a written statement for release to the press immediately following the session. It includes everything, the tracking charms, the suppression bind, the soul fragment, the financial theft, the sealed wills, Black's imprisonment. By tomorrow morning, every witch and wizard in Britain will know. Dumbledore's people will try to spin it, Sirius said. Let them. Harry's voice was steady. The evidence is the evidence. You can't spin 17 tracking charms on a child. Sirius reached over and gripped Harry's shoulder. Whatever happens in there today, kid, your parents would be so proud of you it's stupid. Harry put his hand over Sirius's. Let's go. The Ministry of Magic was, in Harry's opinion, aggressively ugly. He'd seen it once before, in the observation gallery, 2 weeks ago, under Goblin concealment charms, watching a routine Wizengamot session to study the terrain. The underground atrium with its dark wood and green tile, the ridiculous golden fountain in the center, the lifts that rattled and clanged, the whole overwrought aesthetic of a government that cared more about looking impressive than functioning well. They bypassed all of it. The Goblin diplomatic entrance was a door in a nondescript corridor on level 2 that opened only for Goblin-keyed credentials. It deposited them in a private antechamber adjacent to the Wizengamot courtroom, Courtroom 10, deep in the basement levels, where the full body convened for major sessions. Harry could feel the wards around the courtroom, old magic, layered thick, designed to prevent violence, compel truth in testimony, and contain magical outbursts. He could also feel the people already gathering inside. His magic had become increasingly sensitive to the presence of others over the past weeks. He could feel magical signatures now, like hearing different instruments in an orchestra. Some were loud, some were soft, some harmonized, some clashed. One signature dominated the room like a bass drum. Deep, powerful, complex, shot through with threads of intent and control. Dumbledore. Harry could feel him through the wall, and his magic stirred in response, not with fear, but with a focused, cold alertness. A predator recognizing another predator. He's already in there, Harry said. Griphook nodded. He arrived at 8. He's been speaking with members, Elphias Doge, Daedalus Diggle, Hestia Jones. His loyalists. He's preparing his defense without knowing the charge. He knows, Harry said quietly. He might not know the specifics, but he knows this is about me. He's not stupid. No, Razorclaw agreed. He's not. But he's arrogant, and arrogance creates blind spots. He will underestimate you because you are 8 years old. He will underestimate the goblins because he views our nation as a financial service, not a political power. These are mistakes we will exploit. At 8:50, the doors to the courtroom opened. The public gallery filled first. Harry watched through a monitoring charm as witches and wizards filed in, murmuring, speculating. He spotted Andromeda and Remus taking seats near the front of the gallery. Remus looked terrible, pale, drawn, but his eyes were focused and fierce. The Wizengamot members took their seats in the tiered semicircle that dominated the room. Harry recognized faces from Andromeda's lessons, Augusta Longbottom, ramrod straight and formidable in her vulture hat. Tiberius Ogden, ancient and wheezy. Griselda Marchbanks, who looked like she could turn you to stone with a glance. The Malfoy seat, occupied by a pale blonde man with a silver-topped cane who radiated practiced boredom. And at the center of the highest tier, behind the chief warlock's podium, Albus Dumbledore. Harry studied him through the monitoring charm. Tall, thin, silver-bearded, dressed in plum-colored Wizengamot robes. The half-moon spectacles, the benevolent expression, the twinkling eyes. He looked exactly like what people expected him to look like, wise, kind, trustworthy. A grandfather figure for the nation. Harry thought about the tracking charms. About the suppression bind crushing a 15-month-old's magic. About the soul fragment left to feed on a child's core. About Sirius screaming in Azkaban. "I'm ready," he said. Griphook and Razorclaw exchanged a look. The goblin warriors took their positions, one on each side of Harry, a step behind. Sirius moved to Harry's left, and Harry felt his godfather's magic, weakened by Azkaban but still fierce, still serious, pulse in sync with his own. Amelia Bones's voice echoed from the courtroom, magically amplified. "This emergency session of the Wizengamot is called to order under Article 47 of the Wizengamot Charter. The matter before this body is case number 7749, the Goblin Nation and Lord Harry James Potter-Black-Peverell vs. Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. Charges include, illegal magical interference with a minor, financial fraud, violation of the Goblin-Wizard Treaty of 1497, illegal sealing of Goblin-filed wills, conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, and accessory to unlawful imprisonment." The courtroom erupted. Through the monitoring charm, Harry saw heads turning, mouths opening, Dumbledore going very still behind his podium. The old man's expression didn't crack, not quite, but something shifted behind those twinkling eyes. A shudder dropping. A calculation beginning. "Bailiff," Amelia continued, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade, "open the petitioner's entrance." The doors in front of Harry swung open. And Harry Potter walked into the Wizengamot. He'd thought about this moment. Planned it. Visualized it during training sessions with Craghammer, during theory lessons with Griphook, during late-night conversations with Sirius. He'd imagined the faces, the whispers, the weight of 100 powerful witches and wizards staring at an 8-year-old boy who had no business being in this room. The reality was different. Better. Because the moment Harry stepped through those doors, he stopped imagining and started being, and the difference was everything. He walked with the pace Craghammer had drilled into him, steady, unhurried, each step deliberate. Not a child's walk. Not a lord's performative stride. Just the walk of someone who knew exactly where he was going and was not in any particular rush to get there. The goblin warriors flanked him, their armor catching the courtroom's torchlight. Sirius walked at his left, head high, and if his hands trembled slightly, his face showed nothing but iron. Griphook and Razorclaw followed, the advocate carrying a black leather case that contained 3 months of evidence. The courtroom had gone absolutely silent. Harry felt every eye on him, the weight of attention, of shock, of disbelief. He could hear the thoughts without reading minds, because the faces said everything. That's Harry Potter. That's the boy who lived. He's a child. What is this? What's happening? Why is he flanked by goblins? Why is Sirius Black with him? Harry's gaze swept the room and found Dumbledore. The old man was staring at him. The twinkle was gone. The benevolent expression was gone. What remained was something raw and complicated, shock, recognition, and the first flicker of something that might have been fear. Harry held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds. Then he looked away, casually, as if Dumbledore were just another face in the crowd, and walked to the petitioner's platform. "Lord Potter-Black-Peverell," Amelia Bones said, and her voice was formal but her eyes were warm. "Please identify yourself for the record." "I am Harry James Potter, Lord of the ancient and most noble House of Potter," the ancient and most noble house of Black, and the most ancient and noble house of Peverell. I am here to present evidence of criminal actions taken against my person, my estates, and my family by Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. His voice carried. He'd practiced projection with Craghammer, not shouting, not straining, just sending his voice out with intent, letting his magic carry it to every corner of the room. The effect was immediate. Several Wizengamot members who'd been leaning back in dismissal, "It's a child, how serious can this be?" sat up. "Chief Warlock Dumbledore," Amelia said, turning to the podium. "You have been named as the respondent in these charges. Do you wish to have legal representation?" Dumbledore's expression had reassembled itself. The mask was back, the warmth, the wisdom, the gentle authority. "I don't believe that will be necessary, Amelia. I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding, and I'm happy to. This is not a conversation, Chief Warlock. This is a legal proceeding. Do you wish to have legal representation, yes or no?" A ripple through the chamber. Amelia Bones had just cut Dumbledore off in front of the full Wizengamot. Several members looked shocked. Others, Augusta Longbottom among them, looked interested. "No," Dumbledore said, and his voice was perfectly even, perfectly controlled. "I will represent myself." "Very well. Senior Advocate Razorclaw, you may present the case." Razorclaw stepped forward, and the courtroom shifted again, a goblin, addressing the Wizengamot. This hadn't happened in living memory. Harry could feel the discomfort radiating from some of the pure-blood traditionalists, and he filed it away. "Members of the Wizengamot," Razorclaw began, opening his case on the advocate's lectern with precise movements. On September 14th of this year, Harry James Potter entered Gringotts Wizarding Bank for the first time. He was 7 years old. He weighed 29 pounds, approximately 9 pounds below the healthy minimum for a boy his age. He was wearing clothing 4 sizes too large. He had 14 partially healed bruises on his body, 2 improperly set bone fractures in his left arm, and signs of chronic malnutrition consistent with long-term food deprivation. Silence. Total, ringing silence. Upon passing through the bank's security wards, Lord Potter triggered every alarm in the detection array. The reason: he was carrying 17 self-renewing tracking charms, a Class 4 magical core suppression bind, a male redirection ward, and a parasitic soul fragment, a piece of a Horcrux, embedded in his scar. Every single one of these foreign magical constructs, with the exception of the soul fragment, bore the magical signature of Albus Dumbledore. The silence broke. Not into shouts, into a low, spreading murmur that was somehow worse. Harry watched Dumbledore. The old man's face hadn't changed, but his right hand, resting on the podium, had closed into a fist. "I will present the evidence for each charge in turn," Razorclaw continued. "And I will call witnesses, including Lord Potter himself, Healer Sylvanthorn of the Gringotts Medical Corps, Senior Cursebreaker Blackthorn, and Director Ragnarok of Gringotts. But first, I ask the Wizengamot's permission to submit the physical evidence for examination." Amelia nodded. Razorclaw produced, one by one, the crystal vials containing the extracted tracking charms, 17 of them, each labeled, each glowing faintly with Dumbledore's unmistakable magical signature. He produced the preserved male redirect ward, contained in a runic box. He produced the healer's diagnostic scroll, Harry's medical record from his first day at Gringotts, and watched the nearest Wizengamot members read it as it was passed along the tier. Augusta Longbottom read it and went white. A witch Harry didn't recognize read it and pressed her hand over her mouth. Tiberius Ogden read it, looked at Harry, looked at Dumbledore, and his rheumy old eyes went hard. The tracking charms, Razorclaw said, were placed on Lord Potter without legal authorization. Under the Magical Minors Protection Act of 1847, placing tracking magic on a minor requires the documented consent of the minor's legal magical guardian. No magical guardian was ever legally appointed for Lord Potter. Albus Dumbledore assumed this role unilaterally, without filing the required documentation with either the Ministry or Gringotts. Each tracking charm constitutes a separate violation. He paused to let the number settle. 17 violations. The magical core suppression bind was placed on November 1, 1981, when Lord Potter was 15 months old. This bind, a Class 4 suppression, the most severe classification before permanent core destruction, reduced Lord Potter's magical output by an estimated 93%. To put this in terms the Wisengamot may appreciate, Lord Potter's unbound magical core has been measured by Gringotts instruments at a level that exceeds any living wizard on record. More murmuring. Harry felt gazes shifting to him, reassessing, and he kept his expression neutral. The mail redirection ward channeled every piece of magical correspondence addressed to Lord Potter, including Gringotts account statements, Wisengamot notifications, and personal letters from friends and family of the Potter family, to the office of Albus Dumbledore at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. This constitutes mail fraud, interference with Gringotts communications in violation of the Treaty of 1497, and suppression of official government correspondence. Razorclaw turned a page. The financial charges. Over a period of 6 years, Albus Dumbledore accessed the Potter Trust Vault 27 times and made unauthorized annual withdrawals of 50,000 galleons from the Potter family vault. Total misappropriation, approximately 480,000 galleons. Furthermore, an ongoing audit has revealed that Dumbledore engaged in similar unauthorized withdrawals from the trust vaults of 12 other orphan children of the First Voldemort War, totaling an additional 3 million galleons. The murmuring became a roar. Amelia banged her gavel. The sound cracked through the chamber like a gunshot. Order! The roar subsided, but the faces in the tiers had changed. Harry watched the shift happen in real time. The loyalists looking shaken, the neutrals looking furious, the traditionalists looking gleeful in a way that reminded Harry that not everyone who opposed Dumbledore was doing it for the right reasons. The sealed wills. Razorclaw's voice hadn't risen once. He presented the evidence the way Craghammer threw knives, with absolute precision and no wasted motion. The last will and testament of James and Lily Potter, and the last will and testament of Sirius Orion Black, were filed with Gringotts and sealed by Dumbledore using Chief Warlock authority. This sealing had no legal basis, as Goblin-filed documents are protected under the Treaty of 1497 and cannot be sealed by wizarding authority without Goblin consent. The wills have since been opened by Lord Potter and entered into evidence. He produced the wills. Read the relevant sections aloud. Lily and James's explicit instruction that Harry not be placed with the Dursleys. Their explicit instruction that Dumbledore not be given guardianship. Their list of preferred guardians, Sirius Black, the Longbottoms, Amelia Bones, Minerva McGonagall. At the name McGonagall, Harry glanced at the gallery. A severe-looking woman in tartan robes had gone rigid in her seat, her face a mask of something between horror and fury. She hadn't known. She was on the list and she hadn't known. And finally, Razorclaw said, the matter of Sirius Black. The recently exonerated Lord Black was imprisoned in Azkaban for 6 years without trial. The emergency detention order was signed by Bartemius Crouch and countersigned by Albus Dumbledore. The will of Sirius Black, filed with Gringotts and illegally sealed by Dumbledore, contains a sworn magical oath, verified as genuine by Goblin Cursebreakers, stating that Peter Pettigrew, not Sirius Black, was the secret keeper for the Potters. Dumbledore was aware of the Fidelius charm's details. He knew the identity of the true secret keeper. He signed the detention order anyway, ensuring that Lord Potter's rightful guardian would be removed from the picture and Lord Potter would remain under Dumbledore's control. Razorclaw closed his case. The Goblin Nation and Lord Potter-Black-Peverell asked this body to strip Albus Dumbledore of his position as Chief Warlock, to revoke all access and authority he holds over Lord Potter's estates and person, and to refer the criminal charges to the DMLE for full prosecution. We further ask that Lord Potter's emancipation and lordship claims be formally recognized by the Wisengamot, and that his 3 hereditary seats be activated with immediate effect. He stepped back. The chamber was a powder keg. Harry could feel it, the tension, the disbelief, the anger, all of it pressing against the courtroom's containment wards like steam against a boiler. Amelia Bones held the gavel ready, her jaw set. "Chief Warlock Dumbledore," she said. "You may respond." And here it was. The moment Harry had prepared for. The moment Razorclaw had predicted. Dumbledore stood. He didn't hurry. He placed his hands on the podium and looked out over the Wizengamot, and Harry watched the old wizard deploy his most powerful weapon, not his wand, not his magic, but his presence. The weight of decades of trust, of sacrifice, of leadership. The aura of a man who had saved them all from Grindelwald and steered them through the Voldemort War and kept the peace for 6 years after. "My friends," Dumbledore said, and his voice was warm, grieving, the voice of a man burdened by terrible necessities. "I do not deny the actions described. I will not insult this body with denials when the evidence is clear. What I will do is provide context, the context that Senior Advocate Razorclaw, with respect, cannot know. Because the decisions I made regarding young Harry were not made in cruelty or greed. They were made in the shadow of a prophecy. There it is, Harry thought. The greater good. On October 31, 1980, a prophecy was made, a prophecy that named Harry Potter as the one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord. Voldemort learned of this prophecy and targeted the Potter family because of it. And when he attacked, when he murdered James and Lily, something happened that I did not fully understand. A piece of Voldemort's soul lodged itself in young Harry's scar. Dumbledore paused. Let that settle. I knew about the soul fragment. I monitored it because it was necessary. As long as that fragment existed in Harry, Voldemort could not truly die. The boy was, in the most literal sense, a living vessel for a piece of the Dark Lord's soul. The tracking charms, the suppression bind, the monitoring, all of it was designed to protect Harry and, yes, to contain the fragment. The suppression bind was not meant to harm him, it was meant to prevent the fragment from accessing his full magical power. Liar. Harry kept his face neutral. Beside him, he felt Sirius vibrate with barely contained fury. The placement with the Dursleys, I know it was not what James and Lily wished. But the blood wards, anchored to Lily's sacrifice, were the strongest protection available. Only Petunia's home, Lily's blood relative, could sustain them. I placed Harry there not out of disregard for his parents' wishes, but because his survival depended on it. The sealed wills, yes, I sealed them. Because they contained guardianship instructions that would have placed Harry with Sirius Black, who I believed at the time to be the secret keeper and a Death Eater. I was wrong about Sirius, and I carry that guilt. But at the time, with the information I had, you had the correct information. Harry's voice cut through the chamber like a knife. He hadn't planned to interrupt. He'd planned to wait, to let Razorclaw handle the rebuttal. But something in Dumbledore's voice, the practiced grief, the calculated vulnerability, the way he shaped the narrative so that every terrible thing he'd done became a noble sacrifice, snapped something inside Harry, and he spoke. Sirius Black's will, filed with Gringotts before his arrest, contains a sworn magical oath that Peter Pettigrew was the secret keeper. You sealed that will 3 days after the Potters died. You had read it. You knew. Harry stepped forward on the petitioner's platform. You knew Sirius was innocent when you signed the detention order. You knew my parents didn't want me at the Dursleys when you left me on their doorstep. You knew the suppression bind was crushing my magic, a 7-year-old's magic, bound since infancy. And the soul fragment, he let his magic rise. Not aggressively. Just, visibly. The air around him shimmered, gold-tinged, and the torches in the chamber flared, and several Wizengamot members gasped because they could feel it, the sheer density of power radiating from an 8-year-old child. The goblins removed it. In an afternoon. A ritual, painful but effective, performed by a team of cursebreakers using techniques that are well documented and readily available. If you knew it was there, and you did, your tracking charms were specifically calibrated to monitor it, then you also knew it could be removed. You chose not to. For 6 years, you chose to leave a piece of Voldemort's soul feeding on a child's magical core. You chose that. Dumbledore looked at him, and Harry saw something shift, the mask slipping, not entirely, but enough to show the machinery underneath. The calculation. The rapid assessment and reassessment of a mind that was used to being the smartest person in any room. Harry, my boy, I am not your boy. Flat. Final. I am Lord Potter-Black-Peverell. You are the man who stole my inheritance, imprisoned my godfather, silenced my parents' wishes, and left me to be beaten and starved by people who despised me. You do not get to call me your boy. The chamber was absolutely still. Not the silence of shock, the silence of a held breath, of a crowd watching something they knew was historic. You speak of a prophecy, Harry continued. A prophecy that said I had the power to vanquish Voldemort. So your response to a child destined to face a Dark Lord was to suppress his magic, isolate him from the wizarding world, deny him his inheritance, steal his wealth, imprison the people who loved him, and place him with abusers. This was your strategy. This was your idea of preparation. He let the words land. Let the Wizengamot members turn them over, see the shape of them. Or, and I think this is closer to the truth, you weren't preparing me at all. You were keeping me weak. Ignorant. Dependent. Because a powerful, educated Harry Potter with access to his family's resources and his godfather's guidance would have been a player in this war, and you didn't want a player. You wanted a piece. My parents saw it. They wrote it in their will. Our son is not a chess piece. You sealed that will because they saw you clearly, and you couldn't afford for anyone else to. Dumbledore's hands were white on the podium. Harry, Lord Potter, the prophecy requires sacrifice. I take no pleasure in it, but the war against Voldemort is gone. Harry's voice was ice and iron and something else, something that made the torches dim and the magic in the courtroom's wards ripple. The soul fragment in my scar was one of his anchors to life, and the goblins destroyed it. If there are others, we will find them and destroy those too. Your prophecy, your war, your grand plan, none of it required what you did to me. None of it required a child in a cupboard. He turned from Dumbledore to the Wizengamot. Swept his gaze across the tiers. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for accountability. The evidence has been presented. The charges are clear. Every document, every extracted charm, every financial record is available for your examination. I am asking this body to do what it exists to do, to uphold the law, even when the accused is someone you admire. Especially then. He stepped back. The chamber hummed with energy, not just the emotional energy of the moment but actual magical energy, Harry's power still visible in the air like heat haze, and every witch and wizard in the room could feel it. Could feel what Dumbledore had tried to lock away. Could feel what an 8-year-old boy shouldn't have been, couldn't have been, if the old man behind the podium had had his way. Amelia Bones stood. The Wizengamot will vote on the following motions. First, the formal recognition of Harry James Potter as Lord Potter-Black-Peverell, emancipated minor, with activation of the Potter, Black, and Peverell hereditary seats. All in favor? The hands went up. Not unanimously, a few of the traditionalists abstained, and 2 of Dumbledore's loyalists voted against, but the count was overwhelming. Augusta Longbottom's hand was among the first. Motion carries. Lord Potter-Black-Peverell is recognized. Second, the revocation of all access, authority, and proxy held by Albus Dumbledore over the Potter, Black, and Peverell estates. Unanimous. Even Dumbledore's loyalists voted in favor, because the financial evidence was incontrovertible and no one wanted to be seen defending theft. Third, the removal of Albus Dumbledore from the position of Chief Warlock of the Wizengamot, pending investigation. This one was harder. Harry watched the calculus happen in real time, the Wizengamot members weighing evidence against reputation, fact against faith. Dumbledore's loyalists voted against. The traditionalists voted in favor with visible relish. The neutrals wavered. Augusta Longbottom stood. She didn't speak long. She said, "I read the medical report. 14 bruises. 2 improperly healed fractures. 29 pounds. He was 7. She sat down. The vote carried. Not by much, 5 votes, but it carried. Amelia's gavel came down. Albus Dumbledore is hereby removed as Chief Warlock of the Wizengamot, effective immediately. All criminal charges are referred to the DMLE for full investigation and prosecution. Dumbledore is ordered to surrender his wand to DMLE custody pending, I think not." Dumbledore's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a man who had been the most powerful wizard in Britain for half a century. He hadn't moved from the podium, but something about him had changed. The grandfatherly mask was gone entirely now, and what remained was something older, harder, colder. "I have devoted my life to protecting the wizarding world," he said. "I have made difficult choices, choices that I knew would be questioned, choices that cost me sleep and peace and the trust of people I cared for. I did not steal from Harry Potter. I allocated resources toward the protection of a child marked by prophecy. I did not imprison Sirius Black out of malice, I made an error of judgment in a time of war and chaos. I did not suppress Harry's magic to harm him, I contained a threat that could have consumed him. Every action I took because I believed it was necessary." He looked at Harry across the chamber. "I am sorry, Harry. I am sorry for the pain. I am sorry for the Dursleys, I did not know the extent of their cruelty. I am sorry for Sirius. These are genuine apologies. But I will not surrender my wand. I will not submit to prosecution by a system that cannot see past its outrage to the larger threat. Voldemort will return. The prophecy still stands. And when he does, you will need me." Harry held his gaze. The chamber held its breath. "No," Harry said. "I won't." He let his magic speak for him. Not a spell, not an attack, just a release. He let the Wizengamot feel what the goblins had felt when his suppression bind shattered. He let them feel the full scope of his power, unbound, undiminished, vast as an ocean and precise as a scalpel. The torches blazed white. The stone floor trembled. The wards around the courtroom, wards laid by the founders of the ministry, ancient and formidable, rang like struck bells. And then he pulled it back. All of it, in an instant, like a tide withdrawing. The torches returned to normal. The floor stilled. The silence that followed was the most profound sound Harry had ever heard. "That is what you suppressed," Harry said into the silence. "That is what you tried to bury in a cupboard under the stairs. I am 8 years old and I can shake the foundations of this building. I am not your weapon, Professor Dumbledore. I am not your sacrifice. And I am not afraid of Voldemort, or you, or whatever comes next." He turned to Amelia. "Madam Bones. If the Chief Warlock will not surrender his wand voluntarily, I believe that is the DMLE's jurisdiction." Amelia was already moving. Aurors. For Aurors materialized from the chamber's security alcoves, they'd been positioned there in advance, Harry realized. Amelia had planned for this contingency. They surrounded Dumbledore's podium, wands drawn but not raised, professional and precise. Dumbledore looked at them. Looked at the Wizengamot, which had just stripped him of his authority by democratic vote. Looked at Harry, standing on the petitioner's platform with goblin warriors at his flanks and 3 lordship rings on his finger and the eyes of a child who had been through fire and come out forged. Something broke in Dumbledore's expression. Not his composure, something deeper. The certainty. The absolute, unshakable belief that he knew best, that his plan was the right one, that the pain he caused was justified by the future he was building. For the first time, standing in the ruins of his authority, Albus Dumbledore looked at the consequences of his choices and saw them clearly. He placed his wand on the podium. "I did what I believed was right," he said. His voice was quiet now. Not performing. Just tired, and old, and sure in a way that made Harry sad despite everything. I know, Harry said. That's what makes it worse. The Aurors collected the wand. Dumbledore was escorted from the podium, not in chains, not yet, but flanked, diminished, the most powerful wizard in Britain walking out of his own courtroom as an accused man. As he passed Harry's platform, he stopped. The Aurors tensed. You are remarkable, Harry, Dumbledore said softly. More remarkable than I ever allowed you to be. I wonder, would you have become this without the hardship? Without the struggle? I shouldn't have had to find out, Harry said. Dumbledore held his gaze a moment longer. Then he nodded, a small, fractional movement, and allowed the Aurors to lead him away. The doors closed behind him. The courtroom erupted. The next 2 hours were a blur of procedure that Harry endured with the same steady patience he'd learned in the cupboard under the stairs, repurposed now for better things. His 3 Wizengamot seats were formally activated. The Potter seat went to the progressive bloc, as tradition dictated. The Black seat, formerly traditionalist, was placed as neutral, Harry's choice, a signal that he wouldn't be owned by any faction. The Peverell seat, dormant for 7 centuries, was activated for the first time since the reign of Edward I, and the magical pulse it sent through the chamber's hereditary wards made several elder members clutch their chests. Amelia Bones was elected interim chief warlock by a margin that suggested the Wizengamot was very eager to demonstrate its commitment to law and order now that the cameras were metaphorically rolling. Razorclaw filed the formal request for restitution of all stolen funds, plus damages, plus compound interest calculated at goblin rates, which were significantly higher than wizard rates and accrued on a daily basis. The total figure made Griphook smile, which made the nearest Wizengamot member lean away from him. Sirius was formally recognized as Harry's magical guardian, retroactive to the date of his exoneration. When the recognition was announced, Sirius, who had maintained his composure through 3 hours of proceedings, put his face in his hands. Harry put his arm around his godfather's shoulders and held him there, in front of the entire Wizengamot, without a shred of self-consciousness. It was Augusta Longbottom who approached them afterward, in the antechamber where Harry's party had gathered. She came alone, back straight, face set in its habitual severity, but her eyes were red. Lord Potter, she said. I knew your parents. I knew your grandmother, Doria Potter. I sat in the Wizengamot the day Dumbledore announced your placement and I did not question it. That failure is mine, and I will carry it. Lady Longbottom, I am not finished. Her voice brooked no interruption. My son, Frank, and his wife, Alice, were friends of your parents. They were tortured into insanity by Death Eaters shortly after the war. They are in St. Mungo's long-term care. Their son, Neville, is my grandson. He is your age. I tell you this because your parents would have wanted you to know each other, and because I think Frank and Alice would have wanted that too. I'd like to meet him, Harry said. Very much. Augusta nodded stiffly. Then, with visible effort, she added, what you did in there today. The way you spoke. I haven't seen courage like that since, well. Since your mother told the entire Wizengamot to go hang when they tried to restrict Muggleborn inheritance rights in 79. A ghost of a smile. You are Lily Evans's son. Thank God for it. She left. Andromeda appeared and hugged Harry fiercely without a word. Remus hovered behind her, looking like he wanted to do the same but wasn't sure he was allowed. Harry pulled him in. Remus made a sound that wasn't quite a word and held on. That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life, Remus said into Harry's hair. And I've seen some things. The day's not over yet, Harry said. They exited the ministry through the main atrium. Harry had insisted on this, no goblin diplomatic entrance, no concealment, no evasion. He walked out the front door. The press was waiting. Of course they were. Word had leaked, it always did, and the atrium was packed with reporters, photographers, witches and wizards who'd come to gawk. Flashbulbs exploded. Questions were shouted. Quills, charmed, self-writing, scribbled frantically in midair. Lord Potter. Lord Potter. How long have you known about Dumbledore's actions? Lord Potter, can you confirm the existence of a Horcrux? Lord Potter, where have you been living? Lord Potter, what's your response to the Chief Warlock's removal? Sirius. Sirius Black. How does it feel to be free? Harry stopped at the top of the atrium steps. The question subsided into an expectant hush. Senior Advocate Razorclaw will be releasing a full written statement to the press within the hour, Harry said. It will contain all the evidence presented to the Wizengamot today. I encourage you to read it carefully, report it accurately, and resist the urge to sensationalize what is, at its core, a very simple story. He paused. Let them wait. A child was placed in an abusive home. His magic was suppressed. His inheritance was stolen. His godfather was imprisoned without trial. His parents' wishes were sealed and ignored. All of this was done by one man, acting without authority, answering to no one, convinced that he alone knew what was best. Today, the Wizengamot said otherwise. That's the story. Print it. He walked down the steps and through the crowd, the goblin warriors clearing a path with their presence alone. No one tried to stop him. No one reached for him. The crowd parted like water. At the atrium's exit, where the corridor led to the Muggle street above, Harry stopped. The autumn air hit him as the door opened, cool, sharp, carrying the smell of London in October, exhaust and fallen leaves and the faint brackish tang of the Thames. The sky was overcast, grey-white, and the light was the particular quality of late afternoon that made everything look both ordinary and somehow significant. Griphook appeared at his side. The young goblin, his banker, his tutor, his friend, looked up at him with an expression that had evolved considerably from the careful blankness of their first meeting. What now, Lord Potter? Harry looked out at the world. The Muggle street, oblivious. The magical world behind him, reeling. Somewhere, Dumbledore in DMLE custody, facing consequences for the first time in decades. Somewhere, Voldemort's other Horcruxes, waiting to be found. Somewhere, 1,000 problems and injustices and broken things that needed fixing, the house elf bond laws, the werewolf restrictions that kept Remus in poverty, the pureblood stranglehold on the Wizengamot, the war that wasn't over because the man who started it wasn't truly dead. Harry was 8 years old. He had 3 lordships, a godfather who loved him, a goblin nation at his back, magic that ran through him like molten gold, and a world that had just learned his name, not as the boy who lived, not as Dumbledore's chess piece, but as himself. He smiled. The wind caught his robes and snapped them behind him. Now we fix everything else. Griphook bared his teeth in what was, undeniably, a grin. I'll schedule it. They walked out into the October light, the goblin and the boy who was not a boy, the lord who was not yet a man, and behind them the doors of the ministry swung shut with a sound like the closing of one story and the opening of another. Above London, the clouds parted. Briefly, unexpectedly, a shaft of sunlight broke through and caught the merged ring on Harry's finger, scattering light across the grey pavement in tiny, fierce rainbows. Then the clouds closed again, and the moment passed, and Harry Potter walked on into a world that wasn't ready for him. It would have to catch up.